appear in our records. It does not exist.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Tales from the Archives. We're missing a few people, but that's okay. I'm Grayson from Mortis FM. With me are these two guys who have accordingly somewhat curly. Well, your hair's not curly. It's kind of.
It's very straight.
Very straight.
Very thin. Very.
Seth is my brother in curly hair. Anyway, how you guys doing?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Good.
It's been a little bit since we've properly read a book or begun to read a book for Tales from the Archives. Our last stream was for our What If, which was a great installment. That's on Mortis' Spotify or on any of our YouTubes, so go check that out. But we're here to talk about Star Wars The Living Force by John Jackson Miller, which is something that we have been... Bro, they already had the $5 off sticker on your copy? That's crazy.
Immediately. It's wild. But so
funny.
It's the $5 off, and then right below it, it says Barnes & Noble exclusive. So, like, I guess they can choose whatever the price is, whatever they want. But
I guess, yeah.
It's cool, man. It's good stuff
Nice
that it was
book.
hardcover.
I guess I'll limit if I can clear out my dents you see up there. Mine, I signed up for like a free slip thing when the book came out, and I have John Jackson Miller's signature in the book.
Ooh.
Yeah, as well as in my copy of Kenobi. Yeah. Let me go get it real quick.
That's what I was going to say. I was like, you've got double JJM signatures.
Yeah, I do. The only thing that I don't have signed is the New Dawn, which I should because it's a hated book, but that's okay. Yeah, this is just my copy is not exclusive, but it came with a John Jackson Miller bookmark.
What?
And then I taped this in the inside of the book.
Yeah. Ooh.
And that's not printed. That's a real Sharpie signature right there.
Cool.
Unless you show us the authentication certificate, I'm just going to assume you did it yourself.
Let me just call John Jackson Miller real quick. Hey, bro, is this real?
Sure.
Can you fact check this?
Yeah.
Do you remember signing this? He's like, I signed 100 of them. Like,
Seth, did you get the hardcover version too?
No, I'm an Audible man.
you're
Yeah.
listening.
So
you guys
listened
both
to the book.
Yes.
Okay,
listened
we
to the
need to talk about listening to the book because I read it and I listened to it while I read it. That's how I do all this stuff, just because my little dinosaur brain does not allow for me to make up the characters' voices in their head in my head.
Okay.
Were any of those characters from the voices reminiscent of other characters just in any media to you?
I heard Johnny Bravo.
That's one of them.
Yeah.
That's so funny you say that. That one. And I was telling Grayson about this. One of the henchmen guys at the beginning of the book.
Yeah, the one that sounds like a dog.
He sounds like Barney from The Simpsons. He talks like this, Homer.
Yeah. But he's like constantly growling through it, right?
Yeah. Yep. He's like, "Oh my God, this Qui-Gon Jinn."
Yeah.
Like, oh,
these
man.
Jedi. No. Yeah.
Which one of the goons is it? Is it?
It's whatever the Clatoonian is.
Yeah.
Wongo?
Yeah.
Wongo?
Yeah,
oh my
think
God.
that's what it is.
That's funny because like that's kind of how in my head I am at, because Wongo or like Clatoonians are like bulldog people.
Yeah.
So like that's how they talk. That's so funny.
And I don't remember because those are all the species from the Mando episode of Book of Boba Fett that he dices up. They're all the bulldog alien species.
Yeah.
And I don't remember any of them talking, but in my head now they all sound like that.
sound
Like
like
when he dices up, he's like, "Oh no, the Mandalorian."
That's so fun. I do need to listen to it because I can listen to things like when we did Plagueis. I got the audiobook as well as I was reading. So I was trying to listen as I was reading. But what happens is sometimes I'll pause because I'll be like, wait, like I don't understand. But granted, also audiobooks help give tone to lines. So sometimes I'll read a line and I'll be like, well, did they say that sarcastically? Which is kind of hard to tell sometimes, but I feel like they do a pretty good job in this book. So yeah, before I get into like plot, guys, I apologize. I don't think we made this an announcement, but to anybody who was interested or, reading along or has already read the book, you probably have. I know Will has technically read the whole book already, so Mr. Overachiever, and I'm not. We were planning to go through the first 31 chapters, which is basically like the entire first half of the book. However, I've had a very, what's the word that I'm looking for? Just just an irregular weekend in general. Like I was like, I could have gotten it done, but we were going through chapter 28. I know, 3 chapters before the quota, but next stream where we will finish the entire book.
We'll make it up.
Sometimes the living force has different plans.
Exactly.
True.
Yeah. The cosmic force was saying 31, but the living force was saying 28.
Be mindful of the living force.
I guess I'm the living force because it was only my fault. These guys actually did their homework. So, and you know what it was? I told Will this the other day. It's because I made the dumb mistake. I was like, I'll just read another book. Like, I'll just read like a really quick book before this, which was like 170 pages. And it was a great book, High Republic book. However, prioritize your homework, kids.
Yeah, could have got it done.
Could have got there. And not that this is homework. We have established that or whatever. But yeah. So before I get into like kind of going through the actual plot, what have you get? What were you? Will, you've already finished the book. Seth, you've gone through the first 31 chapters. What do you guys think of this book so far? And the first question I have is it better than Dark Disciple? I'm just kidding. Dark Disciple. If you love Dark Disciple, that's awesome. We wish we did as much.
Do you want to go first, Will, or do you want me to?
You kick it off, Bubba.
Okay. So this book is fine so far. I am not a huge fan of the POV kind of style where it's everybody's kind of broken off into pairs, and so you've got kind of 4 or 5 different stories all happening at once. So it always seems like they kind of like leave you on a cliffhanger or just really the most mundane thing ever, and then goes on to another chapter.
Yeah.
And so I think this book starts extremely strong, involving a certain master and his Padawan.
Your
breaking
favorite
up
character.
Yeah, exactly. My favorite master and his Padawan, my favorite duo in all of Star Wars. So they're on they're on public transit, and they end up breaking up a robbery. That is the best part of the book so far, in my opinion.
Robbery is very loose.
Yeah, isn't it? Aren't they trying to rob people on the train?
They are, but I mean, they suck at it. So
yeah, well, that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
They're very like old cartoon. Like I imagine them in like striped shirts with the stick with the bag on there. Like we just put some money in the bag. Like
they're literally. They later call them. They call like the main villain of the book ends up calling them the 3 idiots.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. And you're just like, well, they're literally just Star Wars, the 3 Stooges right here. Like that's what
kind of reminds me of like DuckTales villains or something like that. Like Saturday morning cartoons. Yeah.
Very animated. Which to be honest, I kind of like, because they're not the main villains, but I do like that they are, at least from what I've read, they're somewhat reoccurring. And there's some really funny gags in the book that I'm just like, that was clever.
I was never upset when they showed up. I'll be honest so far. Yeah. But so taking those first 3 chapters with them, 3 or 4 chapters with them, then all of a sudden I think it starts to tank after that. Like some interesting things happen, but then I'm just like, I don't really care about this planet and everybody going and all the Jedi will visit there. Like I was hoping there was a better reason that all the Jedi would have to go on one final mission or something like that, like the back of the book says. So, and then also I will admit, maybe I'm just a bad Star Wars fan, but I constantly have to keep referencing some of these Jedi Council members because like they'll say their names and I'm like, hold on, wait, which one is that? Because, like, again, you only see them in the background in Phantom Menace some of the time.
Fake fan! I know all of them by heart!
That's great. It's great
Grayson
for
has
you.
a tattooed list on his forearm to go off of as an index key. There's 17, I think, total, like,
There's a lot of main characters in this
their,
book.
like main character spotlights, and that's not. I don't think that's counting like the other like just weirdo characters that pop up that are also like they do the Star Wars book thing where they just give them a blurb of like this is Leo Pabliblo and they're from this planet.
They're literally
yes. and they do that little like 3-sentence thing and you're like, okay, now I know a little bit about Leo Pabliblo, and then they go off to the rest of the story. So it's like I guess I'll look that up on Wikipedia later.
Well, the other thing is like towards the end today when I was listening, there was like one part where they started talking about different planets and systems and stuff like that. And I literally like stopped it and just stared at it. And my wife was like, what's wrong? I'm like, you don't understand. I know Star Wars. And that entire 2 sentences of stuff they were talking about, I don't have a clue. I don't have any idea. And I've liked this stuff since I was in 2nd grade. I don't have a clue what they were trying to convey right there about like the different planets or systems that I'm just like, what am I supposed to be doing? Having Wikipedia up and and just referencing it as I'm reading? Like, I'm like, how does that help anyone? There is nothing.
My thing with in the kind of the same vein is different species. Like I know a good bit of species, but there's a lot that I don't even. So they'll be like, here is a Iotrin, and I'm like, what is that? I was like, I know Twi'leks and I know Keldor. Like, I know like the Jedi Council. I know, you know, your Rhodians and stuff. But then they'll be like, there was like, here's a random species that I'm just like, I don't know who that. I don't know. So it literally is like, I'll go on Wikipedia. I'm like, okay.
It's like that character Zalestra that's in it. Like about halfway through, I'm like, who is this? And I go, she's one of those that I had to go on Wikipedia.
They say in the big. You didn't know what a Nautilin was?
Just not off the top of my head. That I just was like, and I'm like, it's Kit Fisto. That like.
That was what I was like with her right hand man. His name's like Burlig or something.
Mm-hmm.
How they describe him as being like bigger and being like a blue kind of version of her, but he's not a Nautilin. He's a something, I don't know. And Eotrin, I believe, is what he is. And I remember being like, what? I was like, what is that? I was like, they have the same head things, but like he's not the same species. And I looked it up, and I was like, oh my god, it's that random species that you see in a 2-second cutscene of The Force Unleashed 2 in the arena on Cato Nemoidia. And I'm like, got it, like that, because I looked that up. I was like, that's that weird guy that gets cut down by Ram Koda in 2 seconds flat in The Force Unleashed 2. So. There is, which I mean, I do like that it's not like, well, here's the same 7 aliens, you know, but at the same time, like,
have a reference in the back or something where I can,
that I think is a huge thing that I think would be like, even in the High Republic, I feel like some of them, when you get like a deluxe edition, sometimes they have pictures of the characters,
like an appendices or something,
or like the old Star Wars books where like you would go to the middle and then you would open it up and it would be like pictures of what's happening in Return of the Jedi, like as the book is going on. So you at least like have the characters. I think that would be immensely. But I mean, this one does have, and I know Seth, you said you read you listened to the Audible, but it does have like a really cool map.
The map is dope.
Quinn.
Yeah.
Where like
where they're all
yours is colored, bro.
Yeah, dude.
Gotta go to Barnes and Noble.
Wait, is mine colored?
I don't know.
Is that only in the special edition, bro?
I don't know, but it's got this really cool poster too.
Ooh,
man, mine only has this.
It's little and in black and white.
Oh, bummer.
Yours has like a whole like text. Okay, for full context, I'm about to start running, and Will knows this. I'm about to start running a Star Wars tabletop campaign for Edge of the Empire. And I'm putting this planet in my campaign because 1, it prevents me from having to make a map. And 2, because I just think it's a cool planet. I like the description of everything. Like it's interesting to me. And that map would be immensely helpful. I mean, I could probably just find someone who like scanned it, you know, but
yeah, I'm pretty sure it's online, but at least like that kind of stuff is super helpful for me because like I'm a very visual person. Mm-hmm. So for stuff like this, like I just need it's like you were saying, Seth, of like, who is this person? That's literally what I was doing just with the front of the book the entire time. I'd be like, okay, that's Adigalia, and there's Adigalia. Now I have her face. Let's keep reading what's going on with Adigalia.
I know, I feel bad that I'm like, dude, I guess I know the council better in episode 2 and 3.
I was about to say it changes a little bit.
It does, but like especially in this one, it's like what's the who was the we had a short that this week where what is his name Oppo Rancisis?
Oppo Rancisis?
Yeah, Oppo Rancisis, where like Connor was just like he said his name and I'm just like I just stared. I'm like, I don't know who that is. Like he's like he later like says, you know, the snake guy. I go, oh, okay. I'm sorry that I don't like it's insane. This book does that.
What's funny is like for me, and I think I've talked to you guys about this before, maybe on an older episode, but like Lego Star Wars is so ingrained into how I see Star Wars in my head. So like
that's how so many of us learned how to play, like how we learned the names
and everything. Like I would never know who Coleman Trebor is without seeing the Coleman Trebor minifigure in my head first and then seeing his face afterwards. Like when I really started to get into this stuff outside of just playing like the complete saga, I'd be like, oh, okay, that's that guy. And this is the sound he makes when he dies. Like that's what goes through my head first. And then I can get these characters around.
I had a Revenge of the Sith. No, it was a complete saga visual dictionary as a kid. I still have it like behind me. And that I like would just sift through that. And that's why like when we finished Dark Disciple, I was like, oh, Living Force will be our next book. And obviously we kind of took a break because Bad Batch and now we're doing Acolyte stuff and everything. I remember rattling off everybody on the cover and Connor being like, how do you know all their names? And I remember being like, I don't know, man. Like, why do I? Yeah. That, I will say that's helpful. Like, because I as soon as it goes to a chapter of like, oh, Eve Koth, I'm like, yeah, I know who that is. Opera Rancisis, I know who that is. Like, and that's just because I'm a loser. So
what else are we doing?
Because from what I remember, I'm like, okay, I'm trying to think which of these guys are not in the council in future movies, you know, Clone Wars, and most of these people are like Stacey Tin and Oppo and all. Well, we don't really see much of Oppo Rancisis, but like all of them. But I'm like, but you have Kit Fisto, who's not in this, right? Yep. Like, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Kit Fisto's not on the council.
He isn't on the council.
I don't believe
they added a bunch of like because Ayla Secura's not on the council either.
Yeah,
they
I
like
think about
all
that.
these like extra people that just are like, hey, we're generals now.
And then you immediately think of, at least for me, in Revenge of the Sith, like the Jedi that go with Mace Windu to kill Palpatine. You're like, oh, of course they're all council members, but Kit Fisto's there and he's not. And
just the Jedi Master, man.
Yeah,
but I mean,
yeah.
I guess all of those people that are in this book are. Well, the only thing is, I can't. Yeah, where is Uriel Poof?
He's dead.
When did he die?
He dies from Jango Fett in the Legends.
What?
I think he does.
See, Seth, you saying I know all this stuff.
You're like I'm a terrible Star Wars fan, but I know this casual fact.
I'm pretty sure he gets killed by Jango Fett, or like
I'm looking it up.
He gets killed.
To my head, I would have never. The funeral of Uriel Poof.
It's like involved in, like is involved with it because it's like in a comic or something.
A comic book. I wonder if that stays. If that resides to be the same in canon.
Okay, so the funeral of Uriel Poof took place after Master Poof sacrificed himself in order to protect Coruscant from Ashar Korda and Onu Dat Radical. Poof's body was recovered after he was stabbed by Korda, who also died from his injuries. His remains were brought into the temple and brought to the Jedi Pyre for the service. The Jedi High Council, Obi-Wan Kenobi and his apprentice Anakin Skywalker, and the three. It's Quirmian. Cormian. That's so Star Wars. Jedi Kindi Ya, Vinyaska, and Lou Raylo were present. With Mace Windu eulogizing. So, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
but when you go down to notes and references, one of the notes and references on Wikipedia is Star Wars Zam Wessel.
Yes, because I know Boba Fett, or I know Jango and Zam were involved in something with it.
So that's in the comics and canon.
I saw the frames of like they're there when he's fighting and all that.
Maybe it happened. So it says appearances, first appearance, and this is just of because the way Wikipedia does stuff sometimes is love you, but like
a little
sometimes it can get confusing. Funeral of Uriel Poof. It says the first appearance. I'm assuming of that funeral is in Star Wars Zam Wesell, like the story,
the novel. Gotcha.
Is it a
It's a comic. It looks
a
like.
comic? Yeah, was it like a one-shot comic or something?
It's the Dark Horse days of stuff. So one-shot prestige trade paperback published in 2002. It continued the story from Star Wars Jango Fett. There you go.
Wait, am I looking at? I'm not looking at Legends, because I would say in Legends he's involved in the Yinshori uprising, which was from, if you remember, was referenced in Plagueis.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he gets killed by that in Legend. I don't know, man. So who replaces Jarl Poof in the Council in Attack of the Clones?
Isn't it Dinosaur Guy who gets gunned down by Jango Fett?
Is it Coleman Trebor, or is it another?
Trevor?
Is that Dinosaur Guy that gets gunned down by Jango Fett?
That's Coleman Trebor, but there's two of those guys.
Why does he have a human name? That's insane. Coleman Reese.
His name
Coleman
is Steve
Trevor.
Smith.
Exactly.
Jedi
if you go Council. If you type in Jedi Council on Wikipedia, it'll show you who replaced who and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's how I went down the rabbit hole. And I'm like, wait, what happened to my boy Yariel?
Yeah. That's so fascinating. Yeah, I want to see not the Old Republic era, not the High Republic era. That was when I was reading when I was reading like the High Republic book, like there was one part that there's a council meeting and Oppo and Yariel are in the council.
Yeah.
And I remember being like, oh, they're still in. And then they were like, here's all these 8 other people, and I was like,
I don't want to show up in the Acolyte now. Yariel Poof.
I'd rather have a hot take, rather have Yariel and Oppo than Yoda. Yeah, sorry, guys.
Exactly. Get Yariel Poof up in here.
You guys know me. I'd rather have Huyang than any of them. I don't care about the Jedi.
No, that would be sick too.
That'd be sick, man.
Maybe they're crafting lightsabers together, like pottery class.
That's what I want to see, dude. I want to see the live action building of a lightsaber. And I was talking to Tony about it, and I was like, if they did like the episode was whoever ends up using the red blade, showing that crystal being bled, but cutting between that and a Jedi building their own lightsaber, just the splitting between of seeing the red blade and then seeing the lightsaber being built. I think that would be so sick.
That would be cool.
Would love to see it.
Okay, so I found it. Yeah, I found the list. Jedi High Council in 32 BBY is what's in this book.
Yep.
Depa, Eth, all of them, whatever. And then in 22 BBY, 10 years later, it's Coleman Trebor. It does replace Jarl Poof. What? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, how does he replace him if he's dead?
So Jarl dies. Coleman takes over at some point. And then Obi-Wan takes over after that. But what I'm really getting thrown off by is that in the bottom right, it mentions that Depa Billaba is part of the council. But then when you go to the 22 BBY, where like the Obi-Wan and Coleman stuff is mentioned, it says Depa Billaba and Kit Fisto. So Kit Fisto is part of the council.
Look, dude, everybody's able to sit on the council except for Anakin, and that's the whole problem.
And that's right there. That's the one rule.
Because I understand now. After Attack of the Clones, at some point, and I remember this is explained in the Kanan comic, Depa steps down from the council. She leaves the council because she gets in this big injury where she's put in a coma for like years. And so Kit Fisto takes over for her.
Huh.
Anyway, we're getting into the deep, deep lore of the Jedi High Council.
I mean, you have to, because there's literally 100 Jedi in this book, and they all get their own shine. That's what I think the thing is with this book, and it's funny that you guys say, like, comparing it to like the animated vibes of a lot of this stuff is like it felt very like one season of Clone Wars to me, or like an arc in
the
Clone
first
Wars.
Season.
Yeah, where you just keep pulling out characters and being like, for 20 minutes, you're going to learn all about Yariel Poof. And then next week, and then they'll end and like a clone trooper will be like, well, I guess I got to fly to planet whatever to go meet with Jedi Master, blah, blah, blah. And then the episode will end and then it'll pick up at the next person. Like they're all intertwined, but they're little vignettes. That's what this book felt like. It felt very Clone Wars to me of the way those first seasons were set up.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was like, I feel this is one book that when I'm reading it, I feel like it weirdly feels more like I'm watching like an arc or something of Clone Wars, like more than like when we read Dark Disciple, where I was like, yeah, this at least feels more like the narrative is clear to me. Yes, there's all these moving pieces because there's all of these different characters, and that's like, Seth, I agree with you. Like, it can sometimes get frustrating. Not frustrating in like I don't think it's John Jackson Miller's fault or anything, but because of the nature of the story, right? Like, you know, you're balancing all these Jedi Council members and the villain and, you know, whatever, like all these other characters. So, like you said, it's like anywhere from like 15-ish characters that you're all balancing. But what I will say is, like, almost all of them I've enjoyed reading, because what this book does really well is all of the council members have feel like very distinct personalities. And I really, really like specific, like the duos that they pair up with people. Like, I really like, you know, Stacey Tin and Plo Koon. I love them. Like, I like reading about them, of like how Stacey's kind of a grumpy old man a little bit, where he's just like, he's very kind of stoic. And then Plo being kind of more wizened, and then them kind of having that back and forth. Or like Ki-Adi-Mundi and Yariel Poof early in the book when they're training those younglings. And Yariel Poof is like very popular with the kids. And Ki-Adi-Mundi's like, just like, you know, just kind of is like gives up or whatever. Yeah. And he's like making fun of like Yariel Poof for not being able to wear hand-me-down clothes. And then he makes fun of Ki-Adi-Mundi for having a cone and he literally does and they're just like laughing about it. So I was like, there was so many times in the book where I was like cracking up, but I was like, this is entertaining to me. Like, this is really like, it's nice to be able to have like a book about like these background characters. Cause that's really what they are. Yeah. And be like, oh, like they all, it's good to have personalities rather than just be like, you know, kind of empty canvas faces. So I do like that about this book. But it is not, in my opinion, I do not view this book as like quintessential reading. It's just like, do you want to read more about the council and kind of see what they were like, what they were kind of doing before the Phantom Menace? Then you'll be very interested in this book, because it's a fun. That's what I'll say is, out of the books we have read thus far, which is only technically our third book, this book is fun. You know, that's what I think is the most enjoyable about it. It's not like Plagueis is very like. It's kind of like the antithesis to this book, where it's like, yes, I mean, I had fun reading Plagueis, but it's not like, and it's not trying to be like, here's this fun story about the Sith. It's like, here is the rise of the Sith and how they've infiltrated and how it ties in and everything, you know?
Well, there's a huge difference between like, because I think that one of the things is like, yeah, the slice of life, like fish out of water stuff is fun, but like, a lot of the characters are just doing that throughout the book. Like, there's really only one that's really like, for lack of a better term, that's in any real like peril or anything like that. Yes, exactly. So, and she's kind of what the
she's been my favorite thus far.
She's the only one that has a real story.
Book. Yeah.
She's the only one with really a story. I mean, again, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan are at the beginning. I don't even know where they at. What are they waiting on? How is everybody there? And they're not there yet. From what I remember, literally the last thing that gets mentioned is Eth Koth calls Obi-Wan, and he's like, yo, what y'all doing? And he's like, we just hanging out, bro. And he's like, can you help me search through all these books?
Obi-Wan's like, oh,
God. He's like, get Qui-Gon in here too. We need to look for these books, man. And he's like, okay. Like, and honestly, that's kind of funny. Like,
is that when one of the Jedi poetry books is talked about? Because there's one book that's referenced that I looked up, and it's one of the books that Luke actually has in Episode 8 in the tree.
Really?
Yeah. So it's cool that they like. I'm pretty sure it's that point where they're talking about, they're like listing all those books. I'm pretty sure it's that point, because I talked about, I went and searched it because I was like, it seems like something that would not just be, it doesn't seem like something that John Jackson Miller would just throw in there. Being that it had like such a prominent name, but it's one of the books it's one of the ancient Jedi texts, the sacred Jedi texts that he's pointing at. You've obviously read further than I. The only one that he found thus far that I've read
was like some Jedi master who like wrote about fishing
Yeah,
or something.
It was a data pad.
Yeah, it was a
fishing.
It was like a little thing that he found, and it was like it literally was just about his adventures fishing on Quinn, and you're like, that's kind of funny.
To quote George Lucas, I may have gone too far. So apologize.
No,
it doesn't spoil anything.
I
It's
was
just,
gonna
there's
say,
a book later on that the book
There's
references a book.
There's a lot of really cool connections in here. Like I have a list before I kind of. Well, maybe I should just go ahead and get into the plot so we can go and it honestly, like the details are not super comprehensive. Like I don't anticipate this being a very like in-depth talk about the Force and stuff, but it's just fun to kind of talk about. So I did the first 28 chapters, and I'll go through in kind of chunks like I normally do, not like 1 or 2 chapters at a time. So Seth already kind of narrated or explained this a little bit, but yeah, the opening of the book is chapters 1 and 2. Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, basically they stop this amateur hijacking on this ship called the Regal Zephyr, and they speak with the locals on the ship and find that many of them are upset with the Jedi leaving these outposts in what was called the Slice, which is like this kind of small part of the galaxy, and the Jedi are like closing down these outposts from the High Republic era and things. You know, they're downsizing, kind of on orders of the Senate and the Chancellor. But Qui-Gon, he makes a promise to help them directly. You know, he's trying to listen to their pleas. You know, they're not quite refugees, but they are people who are in need. So anyway, Qui-Gon is a villain, according to Seth. I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. I had to. We'll get into it later. Chapter 3.
Qui-Gon's the best part of this book.
He's pretty good. He's not in it a whole lot right so far for me.
Does he actually show back up?
He's the best part of this book.
Does he actually show back up?
Well, that would be a spoiler, wouldn't it? So,
well, I feel like you could at least tell me that he's there.
Do you want to see more Qui-Gon Jinn?
I mean, if he's the best part of the book.
Why don't I tell you after we're not on stream for everybody else?
Spoilers.
Right. Hate to ruin it.
Yeah.
Chapter 3.
Come back for part 2 if you want more Qui-Gon Jinn.
Everybody's favorite Jedi.
Seth's favorite. I mean, sorry. I mean, also Will. I meant Will, but maybe Seth's favorite too. You never know. Turn a new leaf.
I think he is.
Chapter 3. Ethkoth and Qui-Gon look over some of the small objects from one of the outposts on Ord Janak, or Janik or whatever, and realize it's been basically vacant for years at a time. And then Plo and Saci work on a ship. They're like refitting, upgrading a bunch of the ships for the Jedi, which is really funny. And Obi-Wan asks,
Plo gets like covered in grease, right?
He in coolant, yeah, which is really funny. And then Obi-Wan pulls up and he asks for their aid, and so the one of those, like, I don't remember the guy's name. I think it's like something. It's like with an H or something. He's basically like, hey, I have a buddy who owns a luxury bus. He owes me a favor. Will that work? And he's like, okay. So they use that to like transport the people from the Regal Zephyr that arrived on Coruscant. Chapter 4, we kind of switch over to the villain's perspective. Zalastra, who is this, she is the leader of the Riftwalker gang, and she is a Nautolan, so Kit Fisto.
In my head, Zalastra looked like, just because I couldn't think of another Nautolan, like Cage from Jedi Survivor. That's what I saw. Yeah, remember the bounty hunter?
Oh yeah, I forgot about her.
Yeah, she's the bounty hunter. She's got the Cad Bane hat with the goggles on it. And,
yeah, she sucks.
Spoiler alert: when Boba Fett shows up, he's the one who goes after her. Sorry if you haven't played the game yet, but
dude,
what are you gonna do?
Hot take: the best Boba Fett scene we've ever gotten in canon, which is really sad.
Really cool, cool Boba Fett scene.
Other than Mando season 2, when he wrecks those troopers' faces, but anyway,
it's really cool.
Really good.
Yeah.
Seth, you got to watch. Have you seen that scene, Seth?
I have, but I don't remember. Like, I remember it being cool, but I'm just kind of like, guys. I mean, like, it's pretty. I think that he has a couple cool scenes in the movies.
Oh yeah. I think for me that was
yes. He is cool.
That Boba Fett scene was like was like kind of what we got in Mando season 2, but if it was before he got eaten by the Sarlacc. It's like that was like prime Boba.
Yeah.
Because he's that's like he's got one focus, and that focus is to get the job done.
Yeah.
So that it was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have to have a debate about this, Seth, later, because I want to know what moments you think Boba Fett's cool in the movies. But I digress. I'll take the L. So yes, they repossessed this this ship that they had stolen. The pilot had like basically hidden on the ship to try to get it back. And they zap her after they kind of whatever. Anyway, but there's a young girl named Kyla, who is working for them. She's like a 12-year-old girl, and she finds something in the hold of the ship. What will it be? Well, you find out here in 2 more chapters. Chapter 5, Qui-Gon finds Yaddle sifting through legal claims regarding the Jedi, which is really funny. There was, which I gotta mention, like one of the ones was like a Padawan or something was like riding a taxi, and he like accidentally turned on his lightsaber, and it like killed took out the droid or something, and made it crash into a festival. And I was like, that is hilarious. Like, that's really funny.
So high school. Like, all of this is like the Jedi in college. Like, when Saved by the Bell like graduated high school, and it's like Saved by the Bell the college years. This is what this feels like. It's like, oh, the Jedi Council, the college years. Like, this is that's exactly what this feels like to me, with all of these different perspectives. And like, I guess with the Acolyte, it's so big right now is to talk about like the Jedi slipping and losing their grip on the galaxy, and losing their grip on their own philosophy. But like, for them to for this to be what the book is about, and there's a whole Palpatine going on, right? Because this is like, Plagueis is alive. He's around.
And Palpatine's, I was going to say, and Palpatine's in this book.
Yeah. There's like a moment, and I'll get to it here in just a second. He's talking to Adigalia because Chancellor Valorum has the room painted blue, and he's like, I've always wondered what it would be like if it was red.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, Palpatine, slide on.
What if it was more evil?
Foreshadowing, kids.
Yes, foreshadowing. Also, right before they purge, you know what? I'll make that joke here in a second, because this is Seth. You told me about this, which is really funny. So yeah. Anyway, finds Yaddle. She's sifting through all those legal claims, and then he stops by the Senate building where Chancellor Valorum and Palpatine and Adigalia and Yoda are dealing with a bunch of monotonous requests. And this is just. Well, let me finish this last chapter, and we'll talk about these first six chapters, because there's some funny stuff. And then chapter 6, back to Zalastra, the 3 very dumb bandits that tried to take over the Regal Zephyr, the Lobber, Wongo, and what is the other one's name? Gore.
Yeah.
They attempted to hijack the ship. After they got dropped off by Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan on some random planet. Actually, you know what's funny? It's called Randon, not random. It literally, the planet was called Randon. Yeah. And they got dropped off there, and they got stuck in one of the vats, like the acid vats that the ship was carrying. Mm-hmm. And so Zalastra begrudgingly hires them, like if they tell her everything that happened, even though she fully expects they'll die, like on the very first mission that they go on, because they're kind of bums. But then Kyla is sent to go investigate the Regal Voyager facility, which is the owner of these Regal Star Lines. And interestingly enough, this never followed up on. Maybe it is followed up on. I don't know yet. Apparently, Kyla investigates, at least in the chapter I wrote, investigates files on the Jedi, but that ends up not being true later on. So I don't know what that was about. First 6 chapters. This is a lot of very funny setup for the book. You're getting a lot of and we're going to get more into it, a lot of the kind of perspectives. I mean, we got to talk about, Seth, you mentioned it like a while back, when they're in the office talking about the boots, bro.
Yeah.
Like the boots that they're like,
I
these
loved it.
boots are ugly.
It's like one of my favorite moments.
It's so funny. Where they're like, we're not wearing those.
Yeah.
You want the Jedi to wear these? It's basically like the Jedi got a brand deal. And
and the whole thing is it just shows how like intertwined they are into everything. And it's like, well, no wonder that like the Sith were able to get under their to go under their noses and stuff like that and just sit like and just hide in plain sight because like they're dealing with all kinds of bull. I mean, they have to like, again, shoe deals. Really?
Yeah. Literally, they're Nike Jordan brand. They're like, we're more of Adidas people, really.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. It's Adi Gallia is constantly on that data pad. Like she's just like a secretary at all times. She's like, they, like you said, it sets up that they are basically at the beck and call of the Senate, which later on we get a moment where they're kind of like, hey, screw the Senate. We're going to go do this thing because we want to, you know? Yeah. Which is a breath of fresh air, considering I know a lot of people's critique, like, and I'm not trying to get into too much acolyte talk, but a lot of people's critiques is like, oh, we see the Jedi so much being, you know, not great, or like,
would you rather see him doing paperwork?
Yeah, and it's like, at least that this book, The Catalyst, is like, yeah, they're kind of being bums right now, but then they finally get up and do something, which Qui-Gon is the one to challenge them on, which is good. Not that the Jedi
really enjoyed that. Like, obviously, I love Qui-Gon Jinn, but like, I really enjoyed that Qui-Gon was used as the catalyst for all this because it's such a reverse of what happens in The Phantom Menace, where like nobody wants to listen to Qui-Gon Jinn about Anakin, and this is when he goes to the council and he's like, hey, look guys, why don't you help some people instead of just sitting up here and working on your ship and talking about boots? Why don't you go actually help some people and be mindful of the living force, the actual living people in the galaxy, rather than just sitting up here in your
that's what this book does really well. Is really defines, like, because I really thought about it. I was like, what is the difference between the cosmic force and the living force, you know? And this book does paint that in a nice light of like, the cosmic force is, you know, it's what Qui-Gon says, where he like believes in the balance of, he's like, always be mindful of the future, but not at the expense of the present, you know? Where it's like these Jedi are so caught up in like, oh, we got to do these really big things that they forget about the little things. And honestly, I wanted to say this when I was reading it last night, is I'm a very big Superman fan. And one of my biggest thing that I love about Superman is when, you know, obviously he fights Doomsday and these big galactic earth-shattering threats, right? But like some of the best stories, my favorite stories with Superman is when he's just helping the old lady across the street. You know, getting the cat out of the tree, or, you know, just stopping a small robbery, or shaking a hand, you know, and throwing a baseball with a kid. Just being like, to show like, hey, I'm not this, you know, this force of nature. I'm a person and I'm here to help. Yeah. And that's kind of what, like, because I am a Jedi fan, and like, you know, we really are so used to seeing them fighting wars and, you know, getting caught up in the dogma, which is even referenced in this, but like, to at least make the, you know, the catalyst of this book, and especially with Depa Billaba, like she's just trying to help. We haven't got to that yet, but she's just trying to help one person, being this little girl.
Even more why she's even doing that. Yeah, that you'll figure out why she even like went to go do this.
Oh, I mean,
do you know why she was even there to begin with?
Because one of the students she trained got killed.
Yes.
Got strangled or got killed, and they didn't know what happened, right?
Yep. And so, that's why she was there to begin with anyway.
A search to figure out who's killing Jedi. Wonder where we've seen that before.
And ain't nothing new. Which I guess this came out, but yeah.
Can I ask you guys a question?
Go for it.
Shoot.
Because Grayson, you just brought up a point where you're like, we usually see the Jedi as, I mean, so much of what we've seen of the Jedi during this time, or like, I guess around this era, is when it gets into the Clone Wars and Attack of the Clones, and then all the way up until Revenge of the Sith. Like, they are soldiers, they are generals.
Yeah.
At what point before Attack of the Clones do the Jedi learn warfare tactics?
They don't. That's the whole thing.
But that's my question is like when it gets to the Clone Wars, they're all generals and like
well, they get forced into that. I feel like it's not.
They also have to like be able to like talk, like understand how to set up like blockades and understand like how to move an army around and where the army needs to go. Or were they just? I guess.
Do you think
watching the Clone Wars, I've always understood.
Do you honestly?
Like, okay. Well, because like Anakin was so well versed in like being able to understand like the thing I think of is with the Gendy episode where Anakin he goes into the base. He's like, I know how we're gonna get in there, and he's eating the worms. Like he understand, like they all understand strategy and defeating the enemy. And I know they're droids, but like I don't know. I just always thought of them like it's so funny that they're war generals. And maybe you're right, Seth. Of like, do they ever?
Well,
really...
I like my only comment on that is I just assume. I mean, they have literally an army that's bred for all of this. That's kind of helping, and all they're doing is just advising. Like, yeah, they're being the generals, like they're the final say. But I assume, like when they're in the war room, that like I would hope that they would listen to their to the captains and the other commanders and stuff like that.
Like Rex is more the one who's understanding the warfare aspect.
Yes, exactly. Where it's like, yeah, we need to be doing. And then like by that time in Gendy, I mean, that was towards the end of the Clone Wars. Like at that point, they should know. Like that's why I think too that like you look at Obi-Wan. He is a very out of pocket, he's the negotiator. He has a very out of pocket, like way of dealing with a battle. I'm just going to go sit and distract and then let the soldiers do their thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they do study though their entire life. Like even if they don't use it, they do study strategy and how to fight. Like it's even said in this book that Plo Koon is someone he understands space strategy.
So that's my question is stuff like that where like,
I mean, Jedi have fought in wars prior to the Clone Wars. Yes, the Sith have been extinct for a long time. There was the
very good point.
It's mentioned in canon. Well, of course, they fight in the High Republic. They fight the Nihil, which was not. I mean, not super long, but I mean, it was a good bit of time before this, but still like
before the Acolyte.
It was before the Acolyte. Yeah, it's like 230 BBY. So currently, literally like
which
200 years before this
than I would, because you're the High Republic aficionado now, but like the Nihil, how do you say
either interchangeable,
the Nihil,
the Nile,
the Nile, they're
River.
the reason why the Jedi pull back so much from all of these temples, right? And because there's that big exodus back to Coruscant where, at least from the stuff I've learned about, they kind of force them. They're like, all the Jedi need to come back to Coruscant. We need to regroup. And a lot of these temples are abandoned, which is why it's cool to see the one that we saw in the Acolyte where they go off to that one. But stuff like the one in this book, it kind of seems like, at least from that perspective, where they really never picked it back up of like, we're just going to take a break and we'll be back soon. But it's kind of like if you go buy a mattress plus and you're like, there's nobody ever buying mattresses in there. That's just an empty bit. Like whoever goes by it, that's what the Jedi temples seem like at this point, to the point where you get to Rebels and the original trilogy, and Luke is going to all these empty buildings. It's like they've kind of been empty for a long time, is what it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, even for him, they've been empty for a long time. I think so. I mean, technically, the High Republic era is not done yet. We still have, I believe, it will finish like all of the main books and whatnot will finish this year. The third phase is the second adult book in the third phase of the High Republic just dropped days ago. Which
they still consider the Acolyte the High Republic era, at least the marketing they have.
They do. It's like the very end of the High Republic era. It's also interesting because there's some debate with like the opening crawl of the Acolyte. They're like, oh, the Jedi have been at peace for hundreds of years, and it's like, well, we're gonna forget about the psychopathic drug pirates that blip around space and wreak havoc and rip ships apart. But that's fine. But I mean, like in terms of like actual wars, like they haven't been in a war since I think there was in the High Republic books they mentioned
fall. When the space station fall.
Yeah, Starlight Beacon, that was a big blow. I mean, even then, like in Light of the Jedi, it's Oppo and Yarl mention this, like the Great Sith Wars and the Jedi Sith War. Like those are things that are directly mentioned. So like, it's one of those things where they're always ready, but like it's, how actively are you using it? I guess.
Yeah, I guess for me, I think of like if like somebody's like, okay, I'm going to go to the Naval Academy, or I'm going to go to West Point, and they're sitting in there in like strategy class. I've never thought of like a Padawan being like, okay, this is like, I have meditation from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. and then I have to go eat lunch, and then I have to go to space strategy starfighter, whatever it is, technique class. I've just never thought of it that way. I've always been like, it's not really ever, at least from what I know of Star Wars, I'm like, it's not really ever mentioned where you see them like becoming that.
Training.
But
yeah,
but I guess maybe in the Clone Wars, all the children are kind of like, because Ahsoka, they're kind of thrust into that and they learn as they go. So
it's the thing is like, the Council and all the Jedi Masters, I mean, they were trained to know that stuff, but then now they are training the kids to that's all they do. Yeah. That's
which
that's
is
a good
cool
question,
in the beginning of this book, where you see Obi-Wan as obviously younger, kind of where he is in Phantom Menace, but like seeing him and Qui-Gon team up and being like, you don't want to mess with him, he's pretty scary with a lightsaber, like that kind of stuff. I thought was even very cool.
They were saying making them think that like it's these this horrible which I think is honestly it's like weirdly like scared straight, which I think is funny.
He can move stuff with his mind. Like
they're like like later on they're like, oh my god, he can turn us into a tree, and they're like, nothing's worse than being turned into a tree.
Yeah,
you're like what are you talking about, dude?
It's very like Star Wars droidsy, or like the Ewok show humor at times in this book, which is it's a good and a bad thing. It's different when it's funny that our first book was Plagueis, thinking about this happening at the exact same time of like how dark and to use the word strategic again, like Plagueis is being, and how the secretive and how it's evil and it's dark, but you're invested, where that felt more like an HBO show. This is more like Cartoon Network.
Yeah,
you know
definitely.
I mean?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Also, I got curious because I get really hung up on these little things. I don't think it's mentioned again, but when Zalastra asks Kyla to go back to keep doing the same job that she's been doing at the Regal Voyager facility to get these crates, or the
briefcases.
The briefcases. She does say, while you're there, see if there's anything in the files on the Jedi. I don't want them nosing around. But I don't think Kyla ever does that. I think because she's like 12, because like as soon as we find out, like she gets that case and she's like running out as like blaster people are like shooting at her and stuff. So so I don't think that ever happens, but I don't know. Plot thread abandoned, I guess. That's fine. But yeah,
well, kind of ruin it though. It ruined the whole secret that Depla's, Hotwire. Is that what she is? That's her name.
Hotwire,
yeah. Her Transformer's name. Yeah.
Yeah. Hotwire.
Yep.
Roll out. Yeah.
Yep.
I want to know what she looks like right now, because obviously she's not wearing Jedi robes, but like I want to know. I want
like a helmet and goggles on, is what she says. Yeah.
I want like what Seth was talking about with the way characters look. I want like that version where somebody just draws it and we see what Depa Billaba looks like at this time, because that's probably sick. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's probably very cool the way she looks as this undercover agent.
I was gonna say Depa is probably the one that that I am enjoying the most in this book, because yes, Seth, you're right. Like it's the most kind of traditional narrative in a way.
He's the only one that gets a plot. Everybody else is like carrying ice,
side quests.
Yes, it all feels like side quests.
Do we have enough chairs for the party?
Exactly.
It's like
we need to order a lot of food. No, you don't understand. A lot of food.
Yeah.
We're gonna be giving it away.
Know how Jedi eat.
Ice is a flavor, idiots.
Yeah.
It's
just
funny stuff.
All right, that's cute, I guess. But
I see. Honestly, like once I got into, I was like, "This is like I do love this," but it's that like TikTok sound or whatever it is of like of like someone like, you know, just like la di da di da, like it's like some ballerina song, and then it's like cutting to another person and they're like running around like super frantic, and that's like it's like the Jedi Council are like, whereas Depa Blabba's like it's like
Yeah,
freaking
she's
out,
in the
you know?
shit.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But yeah, that's the first 6 chapters. Is there anything? I was gonna say we haven't got to her quite yet, but what I will say is I do enjoy that what Depa is doing is kind of what stuff that Kanan does later on, where he's like kind of in, you know, kind of in the criminal element, the underworld, like, and I haven't read all of New Dawn, but like he's kind of doing stuff like that where he's just trying to blend in and be kind of the everyday person, and he applies those those tactics then later on to helping the rebels and stuff in Rebels, where he's you know so like we'll get to it in just a second. This section here was probably my favorite part in the book, but we'll get to it in like a couple more chapters. Chapter 7, there's the scene where Ki-Adi-Mundi and Jarl Poof are teaching the younglings, and they banter, and I think it's really funny. And then Obi-Wan asks them to kind of help donate supplies to the people of the Regal Zephyr. And him and Qui-Gon are like going around asking about a council meeting, like, yo, when y'all meeting next? Can we get a meeting, please? And then Qui-Gon and Mace speak. And Mace is like meditating about the future. Really good line there about threads. Which I'll bring up here in a second.
That on one of my Instagram posts.
Did you like that? Like that? And then and so that's when Mace is like, he's sensing the future, and he kind of picks up some things about Depa, who's on a mission, and that's when we transition over to her, where she's undercover on Keldween, and she drops off Kyla at the Regal facility before being summoned to a council meeting. And then this is where we kind of get like not the climax, but like the catalyst, where chapters 8 and 9, Qui-Gon pleads for the Jedi to be more personable and to prove to people that they care on a very small level. He says like, help one person. A Jedi needs no permission for that.
Yeah.
And the council takes into consideration his request before Adi Gallia mentions a list of like closures that are that are recommended. And one of them is Quinn, which is a very renowned Jedi outpost, was one of the great works during the High Republic era. And they ultimately decide like we don't know if we're going to shut it down yet, but we're going to go there. We're going to celebrate its 200-year anniversary and kind of maybe change its fate and meet the people where they're at.
It reminded me a lot of like the beginning of Lord of the Rings with the birthday party. Like that's what I was envisioning in my head, where like all setting up for that and everything. That's what I was thinking. We're just like everybody's there. It was look, with a book like this, if you were to be like, oh, what's your favorite point in Star Wars? And anybody will give you an answer, and it could be a million different things. And then you go, okay, well, do you want to hear about the Jedi Council going on the equivalent of a space cruise and then throwing a big party? People would be like, what? Just because...
You know what the pitch of this book was, right? Like John Jackson Miller said this like outspokenly. He was like, the Jedi Council go on spring break. That's literally what he said. And I was like, that's pretty funny, man.
It's funny. And as much as it is like, look, this doesn't have like the biggest implications for what goes on. This isn't something where like you're reading a chapter and you go, whoa, that's why in Return of the Jedi, this blah, blah. It's not really that kind of book, but it is world building. And like I said, the biggest thing with this book is learning about how the Jedi are so focused on everything else other than what the Jedi claim that they are actually focused on. Like, if you were to ask any one of these council members what their focus is, it would not be any of the weird half work that they're doing, where they're just doing busy work and paperwork and fixing ships and throwing parties and stuff like this. Like, none of this is what the Jedi claim to be about. Like, You won't find any of this in the Jedi Code, but it is cool that you get their perspectives, because Yoda through this whole thing is like, he's like, yeah, for 800 years we've been doing stuff like this, and I can't believe we're still doing it. And for him to be paired up, he's paired up with Adi Gallia, right?
Yeah.
For him to be paired up with Adi Gallia, and Adi Gallia's like freaking out the entire time of like, yeah, she's this is her first run around with all this stuff, so she's trying to make sure. Yoda's just like, it really is where like, it's a different perspective for Yoda, I feel, where he's more like, we just keep going around in circles. It's kind of like nihilist Yoda. For some point, he's like, we just keep doing the same stuff over and over again. Like, just be focused on where you are. It's like 900 years, we just keep doing stuff like that. It's just funny to me to see Yoda not as like the wise sage old man, and he does still have those points in this book, but like, there's so much stuff where he's just like, yep, we just gotta keep doing it.
Keep it on.
Yes,
yeah, it's what we're supposed to do.
I like, there's a little bit of setup later on. It's like actually in one of the more recent chapters that I read today, but like when they're trying to figure out on Quinn, like where they can hold the celebration at. And he's talking to that Celestin guy about, and there's like, that to me was a really good moment of Yoda where you can tell the guy's downtrodden and,
hanging out in the park.
Yeah, going in the park, he's looking at the sunset, but he's kind of looking down, and he finds out that his father is sick, and like he got basically taken out of the hospital. Like there's nothing really they can do for him. But then also figuring out like, oh, there's like he might be getting in some shady business because of this, right? Maybe trying to support his. And I'm just like, I like seeing Yoda be kind of like the friendly old man on the bench, of like. Being like, well, what's going on? I've got the sage wisdom, so
he's a listener in that moment rather than the guy who's giving the advice. It's cool that he's able to do that. That's like, look, Yoda gets a lot of crap from people of like, oh well, he was disillusioned, he was in charge of everybody, and then all of this happened. Like, it was Yoda's fault.
He's a warmonger. Yeah.
When you look at the council of like people who are trying to do the morally correct thing, I always feel like, as opposed to somebody like Mace Windu, who's like, well, this is what we have to do because it's the rules. Yoda's more like, well, let's do the right thing in this moment, where that's why he's at the top. And obviously because he's been alive for 1 million years, so they could just ask him what happened 200 years ago. Be like, hey, what happened 300 years ago? Does this ring a bell? Does this kind of like what we're doing right now? And he's got so much wisdom because of his lifespan. But like, I do like as he gets older, that he's more of like the sit and listen kind of guy. But then you see him in the Clone Wars, and he's still doing like, I mean, the first episode of the Clone Wars is him slicing and dicing, especially in Attack of the Clones when he has to. But I think I prefer this version of Yoda where he's just kind of the Dagobah sit and listen. Yeah. Oh, that's what you think? Well, it might actually be like this, and why don't you think about that? Like that kind of Yoda is more my speed, what I enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of moments like that in the book. Like, I get the feeling that Seth does not like this book. I get the feeling that you think fine means like, nah.
I mean, again, that like, I only like part of the stories. That's the problem. That I'm just kind of like, yeah, I can get that. Like, there's fun moments and stuff like that, but I feel like even those are kind of few and far between. Like, I don't like, like that. That's kind of where I'm at with it. I'm hoping that it all, and like, I don't know, we haven't even mentioned Mace Windu hardly. Like,
I was about to say,
what's his adventure? Cool, he's hanging out with someone who's somehow more of a jerk than he is. Like, whoa,
yeah, that guy sucks.
Wow,
yeah, that guy sucks.
Yeah, so
he's like, run around, children, little Gerald Veers, you idiots, which just kills me, bro. Yeah,
basically.
Yeah. Also, the villain isn't really like, and I mean, continuing as the book goes on, but like, I feel like the villain who is kind of like who they're, if you like the main bad guy, because Star Wars always needs a bad guy, with Zalastra is like, she's kind of overlooked a lot of the book. Where
she's just there, and she's only in one part of the story. Other than that, we're figuring out droids taking taxi cab drivers' jobs, or someone dropped.
Okay, but I love that. Like, I thought that was great.
I'm just saying that like it's all these baby problems, and they're trying to fix the planet kind of on the streets. It just reminds me of like an 80s like I don't know, like an 80s like PSA movie where it's like, guys, gather round. Let's go pick up some trash. Let's go talk to someone. Like it's just like, you know what? Outside those doors, you can make a difference.
Yeah.
We're the Planeteers. You can be one too. Let's save the planet. Yeah, it just feels like that. And it's like, that's fine. I guess, like, I was excited when you guys, like, advertised the book. I'm like, cool. This is the Jedi on their last mission before episode 1. Maybe something horrible, crazy happens.
Yeah.
It kind of, like, makes them go, oh, well, we're not just going to do this anymore. No, apparently we're just going on spring break. And granted, I know we haven't read the whole book yet, but, like, yes, I haven't though. We haven't gotten that far, so I can only make some judgment. But no, instead we're gonna have women that are they're gonna act like they're hitting on Kayadi Mundi to get their husband to acknowledge her again.
That was so funny, bro.
Is it though? I'm like, it's fine, but just.
It's funny that it's Kayadi Mundi, considering that he has like 16 wives or something like that.
That was only in Legends. Yeah. That was only in Legends.
But it is funny that like, because that's what I think of when I'm like, oh, of course they're hitting on this guy. It's like, oh,
why does he have 16 wives in Legends?
Because his species is dying or something. So they're like,
so he's like, oh, you got to get in there and do your thing.
Yeah, they're like, whoa! I know we can't have attachments, but like,
yeah.
We need a couple more Kayadi Mundis running around out here.
I gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, and then
he's doing his part.
The canon, they were like, we're not gonna do that. Yeah, that's a little weird.
I will say when Grace, before you hopped in, we started. Seth,
I'm sorry, guys.
No, go ahead.
How do I'm asking a question because
what?
How do I turn you guys down a little bit? How would I do that? In like the settings?
We go to settings.
I'm sorry.
I think you would go to settings, click audio, and then no, you wouldn't do that.
Nope. Would I just turn it down in my like just my speakers?
Yeah. Like I mean, you got headphones in. I would do it.
Yeah,
I would probably just do it from the headphones.
I wish I could.
I think if you like go to the speaker, is it a Mac or is it a PC?
It's a Mac.
Or IT Tales of the Archives.
I'm sorry, guys.
Oh, it's okay. I don't care.
System
if you go to top right, if your Mac looks the same as mine, and you go to the
3 little dots.
Yep. Well, I don't know what your Mac looks like, but if you go to like where you switch the sound, there's a slide bar, and you can scroll it down, just like the overall audio.
I don't see that. I'm gonna go into system preferences and see if I can do something. I'm sorry.
Or you could hit the magnifying glass and then just type in sound.
Stop yelling, Will. You too, Grayson. Thank you, Tony. Sorry, guys. We've been low-key also ignoring the chat.
Oh yeah, I guess we could talk about chat while we do.
I'm sorry, guys.
Hey,
we're locked in.
Eric G's here. Metroplex Asylum's here. JT's here. Hey, JT. My name is Jeff. What's up, dude? Let's see. Ordinary's here. What's up, dude? Meredith says I cannot get over how Yariel Poof is a real name in Star Wars. Yep. Everybody's favorite Jedi Council Glup Shido. Cole is here. Lex is here. What's up, dude?
What up?
Oh, dude, we got all the homies in here. How about that? It's just one big joker. Yeah, he's funny. Tony,
he said it's not my fault. My name sounds like the end of a magic trick. That's not from the book. That's from Robot Chicken, isn't it?
No, it's from the book.
Really?
Yes, he says that.
Oh, so everybody's on the Jedi Council, huh?
It's all I think of is his voice is like,
ooh, do or do not listen here, Yoda. That's all I hear. Sorry.
Voice cracking, dude.
Oh man.
I'll go through the next couple chapters while if you're figuring that out.
I'm sorry, I can't figure it. It's fine. Whatever. I'll get to it. I'll get.
Is it plugged in directly?
Plugged into my mic.
Oh, you can just turn it down on that. I think. There's a little
I turn myself down.
No.
Oh.
Do it again.
Now talk.
Hello.
Hey.
Oh, that's so much better.
Wow.
Sorry.
There you go.
Okay, cool, guys.
What's
I'm
up,
sorry.
guys?
I realized it was plugged into your Yeti, and I was like, oh, well, okay.
Oh, that's so much better. Anyway, okay.
So that's like ears are ringing. He's like,
Yeah,
I hate this book even more. No,
When
just
you hit
kidding.
those high notes, man.
With my operatic Celine Dion
Yes.
vocals.
Goodness.
Sorry, I was so loud.
Yeah, exactly.
So we pick back up after they decided to go to Quinn, or chapter 10. And so Depa, this is, oh no, this is not my favorite chapter, but this is later on.
Oh, look, plot.
Yes. Here's what I will say. I do think whatever is happening here will tie back. I just think it's taking.
Mace Windu's gonna go save her. I mean, he's like trying to figure out where she's at, and then he's gonna be like, "This party's over," and she's gonna be like, "I don't have any hands," and he's like, "Now you don't have any hands," and then,
dude, I'm
like
not gonna lie. When later on, when they do reveal the whole hand thing,
yeah,
I thought
It's
it was gonna
legit.
be Mace Windu who did it, and I was like, but they didn't say that. Unless it is, we don't know. But I don't think so. But yeah, so she rescues Depa rescues Kyla from droids that end up finding them. So they drive away. They go to her little hovel where she drops off one of the cases, which is what these kind of electromagnetically sealed, unscannable cases that Regal Voyager uses for certain passengers or whatever for very high profile items. But it's completely empty. And so the council, we hop over back to the council. They prep to go to Quinn, but some have business to attend to beforehand, so they're kind of all getting there at separate times, you know. But Mace is like, I'm gonna go find Depa because we haven't heard from her. She should be wrapping up her job soon. I'll meet up with her. Chapter 11, Oppo arrives on Quinn. And he kind of is going over its history. He has a lot of attachment, a lot of sentimentality to this planet. And he finds that the planet is definitely not doing great. It's a lot worse off than when he last saw it. Some more air pollution and, you know, speeders are kind of lying around and stuff. It's not like it's just like this apocalyptic wasteland, but also it ain't great.
It reminds me of Frog Lady's planet in Mando.
Yeah.
That's where my mind goes to.
Yeah.
What
planet was that?
I don't remember. It's
I
where
don't know.
Bo-Katan and
I remember.
Reeves and Axe Wolves, they're all hanging out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And they infiltrate that one ship. Yeah.
Yep.
But anyway, Oppo goes up to the temple, what is called Sanctuary Mount. It is on the I believe called the Citadel Key. So basically there's all these islands that are on different keys. And he finds the keeper by a person named Seneschal, or their title is it Seneschal or Seneschal? How's it pronounced? Seneschal?
I think it's Shoal.
Seneschal? Okay. Seneschal Vo. And I have something written down about him in just a second, but I'll bring it up later. And he... and basically Oppo's like, hey, the council's coming. Let's get ready. And he's like, let's go! That's what happens there. And then chapter 12, we go back to... This is my favorite chapter currently. I was very invested. Chapter 12, Depa and Kyla, they end up stealing another case. They kind of do some more tactics, but then they get ambushed by one of the opposing gangs, the Staved Skulls, which is a cool name, by the way, cool design. They have these like spikes in their head. I was like, that's cool, very Star Wars. But anyway, they're kind of cornered by these guys. And then Zalastra and the Riftwalkers end up saving them. But Depa, what she does, to leverage getting into the gang, to try to get more information about what they're doing, she kind of sneakily relocks all of the crates, and she's like, hey, I'll work for you guys, and I'll unlock one of these crates because you need them. You won't be able to get into them without me, and one a day, I'll give you one. Let me stick around. And so, but the very last one, the fifth one, she puts her saber and her comlink in it, so that way when they pat her down, they won't be able to find anything. And so it's so 80s.
Yep.
Yep, and like Mason
Yeah.
B's trying to get a hold of her, but it's in the sealed case, and she can't open it now for 5 days.
It's super
Yeah.
MacGyver.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's where that ends off, and then I'll stick with this chapter because I'm losing remember how many I'm doing right now. But Evan Peel, chapter 13, he goes to one of the keys, and this is kind of funny. He finds that like there's a school that's basically inoperable. It's like basically like an inner city school. Like these kids are like, it's like the teachers aren't really there. They're not getting fed. The discipline officer or whatever or whoever he is like quits as soon as Evan Peel walks up. He's like, "Yep, I just quit." They kind of have a little bit of a bout before Evan Peel is he ends up feeding them because he came from a planet that has a lot of food for the system, and he's like, "I'll teach you guys. I'll teach you guys some stuff about the Jedi," which is pretty funny. And it's funny to think because I think Evan Peel has a Scottish accent in the Clone Wars.
I don't remember what he sounds like. But
No, he has a Russian accent.
Yes, he does sound kind of rough.
Yeah.
He's okay. He's like the uncle.
Anakin Skywalker.
Yes, he's the uncle that you go, "Hey, can you show me how this works?" And he's gonna show you, but it's kicking and screaming the entire time. Or he's gonna be like, "Hand me a wrench." No, the other wrench. All right, now pay attention to me, boy. Pay attention. Like as you're trying to do that, and he's gonna give you good information. But he's not going to be nice as he's doing it, I don't feel like.
So can you show me how to do this again? I already showed you that.
Exactly. I've shown you. Weren't you paying attention?
Yeah.
Isn't that more like Stacey 10 though in this book or no?
I mean, like, I feel like that they're both pretty grumpy. Why?
I don't know. I think Evan Peel is not that grumpy. I think he's kind of like
I feel like he's maybe more matter of fact than Stacey 10. I mean,
he like takes the kids because later on he takes the kids to the facility that's like funding it, and he's like, "We're doing art class," and they're like painting on it, you know.
But I feel like that he's still being gruff about it. That like he's just like,
I don't know.
I feel like it. I don't know. Maybe maybe I misread it.
I just didn't pick up on that at all. I mean, you guys also have the audiobook, so like it definitely inflects how you read it a little bit.
Yeah, but I mean, like he's just we're doing art.
He is very matter of fact. It feels like it's very like guy who shouldn't be a teacher teaching a class. I feel like
Drex.
Yeah, exactly. Where it's like, who's the one guy out of this group that you're like, probably isn't the best with kids? It's like, send that guy to figure this out. And that's what it also too. It's just another example of the Jedi, like the council being so removed from the galaxy itself. And like how to deal with people. That stuff like this is like, well, I guess I got to go talk to a person. So they're just out there like, I guess I could help these kids. And it's very like you said, Seth, where it's matter of fact, but he's very like blunt, where he's not going to be like he's not the guy who's going to like get on your level and talk to you. He's like, no, okay, if I'm in charge, I'm in charge. And this is the way it works now.
Because like the very first really interaction you get with him, blunt, I guess makes sense because he goes like very beginning of that chapter specifically, he like goes up to like the little like tour station thing, and he's like, "Where can I go to get beat up?"
He wants to get into a fight.
He's like, well, because he's trying to find like where the trouble's at and where he can help, you know. And he's like, "Who's gonna smack me in the face? Come on!" And the guy's like, "What?"
He's occasionally like a little Logan Wolverine coded, where
I can see that.
Kind of where like where he's just like, "All right, bum, this is the way it's gonna work," and like. Wolverine's obviously a teacher at the school for Xavier, like
not a good one, but
not a great one, but he is.
That is I mean, even to the point of Wolverine has the point, and Evan Peel has the
the years.
They're both not very tall. Like that's kind of where
I see what you're saying now, Seth. Like, that makes sense. But the chapter
10 just doesn't like you. It doesn't matter.
Literally, the amount of times he goes. Like he's just but I like that he is the dad that's working in the car that's like you're pointing the flashlight at the wrong spot, you know?
Yeah.
And he starts yelling at you, you know? He's like, no, point it here, you know? Which is pretty funny. But I mean,
no patience, or like he's just like,
literally, he's just like they even say he's like he's doesn't interact with a lot of people, which is like again, that's what I think is a strength of this book, is that it shows that all the Jedi aren't just the Jedi. Hello, you know, like it's like they all have distinct personalities, which is, you know, and obviously there's some crossover, like. That's what I like the most, but where it's like, well, here's this massive D&D party, and they all kind of have some, they're all the same class, but they all have some a lot of nuance, you know?
Yeah.
But so much of this book, and I thought of you too, Grayson, well, because obviously you're doing your campaign, but like so much of the stuff, like the Slice and all of these places, like so much of that stuff was originally from the RPG stuff. So like,
really?
Yeah, so like it's very cool to see those little nod-ins, and it's funny because like when you and I talked about, you were like, "Oh, I want to use this planet." The more that you go on and then look back, you see how much of the stuff is like, "Oh, that's where it's from," and you can get like a guidebook where it originally brings it up. So I think it fits to where you are with what you're doing with Star Wars right now.
Yeah, it's I like. That's all.
I like it.
Stuff. Yeah, I like
it.
Yeah, dude. Flipping through I was just Seth. I don't know if you saw that I posted that like foreword from Dave Filoni. It's from the newer RPG books, but it was the Rebels specific book for Edge of the Empire. It's called like Dawn of the Rebellion or whatever. But the first page is a foreword from Dave Filoni, and it is so good. So good. Like he's basically talking about like he's like, you are the storyteller. As the storyteller, challenge yourself and challenge your players and your friends to do things we've never done before. Like he's like the Empire is at your disposal. The Rebellion, it can do whatever you like. He's like but then he says at the very end, he's basically like he's like, just try not to get the ghost blown up, because that'd make Hera really sad and would make us very sad too. But if it does go down, make sure it goes down fighting, you know, because it doesn't have to stay within the strictures of canon, you know?
Yeah. You're doing your own thing.
Yeah, but I mean, I obviously as a purist, I try to like keep it in there, but it's still, I'm just like, that's a really cool mentality to have, to be like, Dave Filoni's like, let's do things we've not done before, you know?
Yeah. Well, it's the sandbox. I mean, like, I think that's kind of all of our dreams, is to eventually have that, I don't know, situation or whatever. I mean, it's kind of like what we do on Beyond the Dune Sea with Connor and I. It's just characters.
Yeah.
We're just playing in the Star Wars sandbox. And so, like whatever capacity you have to do that, I totally think that you should. I think that's what it's there for. Yeah.
The best line from that you posted, Grayson, from that forward was, in the Star Wars universe, your only limit is your imagination. That's 100% it that Dave Filoni said. So it's also cool when you think of like him being the chief creative officer of like, that's his perspective for what gets done, and he has his hands in so many different pieces of Star Wars. It's like, if that's the base of how he thinks about stuff, it's like it always makes me excited for new stuff. It's like, okay, if that's the guy looking over it, that's the goal. It's very cool. Yeah.
Very cool. It's like when we all, Seth, it is something that I now champion with all my heart, of how everybody has their own Star Wars. I don't even know if I told you that I mentioned that to Ashley Eckstein, what you said about like everybody having their own Star Wars. Like I wasn't like, oh, my friend Seth from Beyond the Dune Sea, but I was like, I was basically like, I was like taking that mantra, because what happened is I went to the panel, and you will appreciate this, because I know this is something. Let me indulge you. Yeah. Here's a tale from this archive. So I went
That's our time, folks. We're done for the day. Sorry about that.
Wait. So I went to South Carolina Comic-Con, and they had both James Arnold Taylor and Ashley Eckstein were there, and they were talking about like how they got the jobs and stuff like that. And so James Arnold Taylor was talking about how one of the earliest gigs that he did, was for, I think the very first time that he was Obi-Wan was the Gimli show.
Yeah.
Or game. Yeah. Because he did that. And then he was in the games with Revenge of the Sith game and all of that stuff. And so that was kind of his first thing. He didn't even know it was, he maybe he didn't. I don't remember. I have the video of it, so maybe I'll post it at some point. But anyway, he was talking about how much of a shame it was that like that's not canon anymore. And I was like, yeah, like it does suck that it's not canon. But to me, like when you guys did your coverage of that, it really gained a new perspective because that was something that I love that micro series so much because it was something that like I was blessed enough to have the DVDs from like a Force Unleashed FX lightsaber that came with volume 1 and 2, or maybe even my dad like had it or something. And I still love that. And so when he said that, I was like, oh man, that kind of sucks that he thinks that it's like that it kind of doesn't matter anymore, you know? And so I didn't get to tell James about it. I did meet with him, but I talked because I met with him and then I got in line to meet Ashley. And very similarly, she was talking about how, like she obviously has a lot of like, possession and attachment to Ahsoka, and sometimes they don't consult her when they use Ahsoka, which they don't have to, but it does suck or whatever. But I was like, when it came to the stamp that she made on Ahsoka, and the same thing that the stamp that James made and that entire micro series made of being able to have that sandbox, and I told her, I was like, think of how many people's Star Wars where you are their Ahsoka. And I also was like, James mentioned, how that's not canon. It's like, that doesn't mean it doesn't matter. Just because it's not canon to what Disney puts in this box does not mean that it is any less important. And like, yes, I know people don't like to use the word headcanon and stuff, but some people like, that's their Clone Wars,
well,
like that.
It doesn't diminish the art they made.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's in fact, like that's the kind of the beauty of it, because it just means like, think of all the people that it affected and it still exists, and like yet there can be this other thing that exists, and it be like it's the whole campfire stories and stuff. And so kind of to wrap it all back to this book of like, I think also just reading these books and being able to do this is so fun, because it's like an author got to be like, or he got greenlit to be like, hey, I want the Jedi Council before the Phantom Menace to kind of go on this mission and it be like fun and lighthearted and literally like they're kind of going on spring break. And it's like, is that quintessential reading? Is it quintessential? Like I've already said, it's not. But if it's a fun book, it's fun to kind of get all these little POVs and be like, that random Jedi in the Phantom Menace, I don't know anything about that guy. What is he like? And we get a little bit of time with that in Clone Wars. And so, who's to say that one day there won't be another Tales of the Jedi thing that overwrites this book or whatever. Like I hope, that sucks when that happens, but like we
need like 3 episodes about Yariel Poof. That's the whole thing. Yeah.
That's what I was thinking of with the Qui-Gon Obi-Wan stuff at the beginning of this book is like, I would love to see an animated, like just a short version of that where it's just, it's Qui-Gon having it's them standing together, and you don't want to do that, and not when we take on our life.
They're like bouncing off of one another.
Yeah, they're very Batman and Robin in that, where like Obi-Wan is like, you're not gonna like when this guy gets so mad, and Qui-Gon's like, it's all right, we'll figure it out. Like it's very Batman.
It's
and
like
Robin
only if I have to, like literally when the goons are like, that's it. I'm out, which literally happens in the book where he literally is like, take my gun, I don't want it. Like, so that's why you like Qui-Gon, because he's Batman.
No, I don't think Qui-Gon is Batman at all. I would not. I think Qui-Gon is way different than Batman. But I think at that moment, it's just like the hero sidekick sort of deal of it. It was very reminiscent of like, even like the Adam West Batman stuff of like, well, Robin, what are we going to do now? And then Robin's like, well, I bet they're going to be pissed at what we tell them next. And then the goons are like, well, what are you going to tell us next? That it was very reminiscent of that. Or even like the Batman animated series, like the stories of Batman and Robin when it's Tim Drake and not Dick. But like, it was very much the way they bounce off of each other. I really enjoyed that beginning, and also too, like, just from the Qui-Gon perspective of things, it's like the whole point of this book, like literally the title is The Living Force, and Qui-Gon was such a champion for
came from him. Yeah,
it literally came from him. But there's so many other points, like within the first 15 pages, there's so many references to like other points in Star Wars where like even though the council members like Master Yoda regularly instructed Padawans to pay attention to the present where they were, like that's such a powerful thing in Star Wars, and that's literally what he tells Luke, and always worried about where he was. And
yeah,
that's like it's very cool
always
to see that. But
horizon,
exactly. But I think the biggest thing with Qui-Gon here is how much the reason why he isn't on the council is why he gets the council to go through this whole thing in the first place, is because he's like, this is like his last ditch effort to be like, okay, maybe we can rein everybody back in from what their issues are. And they're so not disillusioned, but so focused on everything else rather than obviously what Qui-Gon's focused on. And not to say that Qui-Gon's focused on the right stuff all the time, but he is pretty based a lot of the time in what his focus is. And even the like when he's talking about the transportation routes, you know what I mean? Like, that's the whole point he's on there. What's up, Seth?
I mean, I think that it's like, it's not that he's doing what kind of like the Jedi should be doing, if that makes sense. That it's like, because like, as you say, the living force, which can be equated to that, like he's listening to living things, rather than like, you know, the force.
Yeah.
Because, you know, like all those that have passed on, all those that aren't, you know, all the rest of everything else. So I don't think that that's a bad lesson to try to teach people, where it's like, you know, get reacquainted. And then like, again, why Qui-Gon seems like a kind of like he's a boots on the ground kind of guy. You can't do that while you're sitting in your ivory tower, as they say in the book. Yeah. So that's why I can understand why he wouldn't want to be granted the rank of, you know, or a member of the Jedi Council. I guess he have the rank of master. I'm sure he did.
He is a master. Yeah,
he is.
Gotcha,
they say in the first couple chapters of the book that he was like, oh, he's a master, and it's like, yeah, he was also asked to be on the council, and they're like, oh, blah 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 blah, and then he's like, oh, but he also turned it down, you know, and you're like, bro, this guy's so good that he did, he turned down the council.
He'd rather worry about transportation routes.
And the entire reason they're even on that transportation route is kind of deal with like the living force of like, he wanted to be in the present. He wanted to be with the people so that Obi-Wan could have exposure, like, because they're all caught up in the temple. He's like, you know, they're raised with not a whole lot of social interaction. And he's like, and so Obi-Wan is literally trying to make friends with people on the ship, which ultimately triggers the, you know, Gore being like, or whatever, like, you know, but it's cool little things of just Qui-Gon trying to encourage like being amongst the people, you know. He even like kind of gets onto Obi-Wan a little bit where he's like, oh, I'm afraid I lack the common touch, and Qui-Gon's like, these people are your equals, you know, don't say like, you know, the way you're speaking is like you're above them, you're not. And I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically what he says.
You are not better than these people, you are a servant to them. That it's very
when you look at life like that, they're just as much the living force as they are.
Yeah,
the Jedi can wield the force, but like that doesn't make him actually better than anybody else.
There's also so many moments where
it's a very selfless way of like looking at everything, which is, you know, Jedi should be selfless.
There's all these moments in the book with various Jedi where solutions, they're kind of like trying to figure out things, and solutions end up presenting themselves where they're just able to talk. Like, there has only been thus far for me in the book one time where a Jedi activates their lightsaber and actually swings it at somebody, you know, which some people may be like, hey, that's not what I want. That's fine. But like, it's like, that's the only time that ever happens. Everything else, like, they pulled out their lightsabers a couple times, but then they've never actually had to do anything because they end up just like, which is like, I don't know. That's cool to me.
At this point, I don't think they're really using their weapons a lot anywhere in the galaxy.
Mm-mm.
Like, unless they go there, if
the cloud can kind of make sure that doesn't, that it doesn't even have to get to violence. You know what I mean?
Especially
like, you really want to mess with me?
Yeah,
I'll turn you into a tree.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why does that make me think of that No Way Home line? Or is just like, that's just a tree, man. Just a tree. Do you guys remember that? It's Jamie Foxx. But yeah, so we'll keep trudging forward.
I'm sorry that I'm like, I feel like I always poo-poo on these books. Like, I just feel like I'm over here being the wet blanket.
I'll let you. I'll get you in on a little secret, and I know you've already read this book, but I think little announcement for people. I will make it legal. I'm kidding. But possibly that the next book or series of books will be Heir to the Empire. Just saying.
Okay.
Just saying. That's what I'd like to do, maybe. But we'll see how it be. That's a top contender. Is all I'm saying.
Gotcha.
All I'm saying. I know you like that.
Gotta read
book.
that before the movie.
Yeah, that's the big thing. Ahsoka season 2, even we gotta chapter 14. Mace Windu, he rendezvous with the Assurance, which he kind of interrupts this mission where they're trying to take out this ship associated with the Vial, which is another one of the gangs. And the captain, the sucky guy, Pel Balo, is running a tight ship contractually. He's kind of going in and out of these jobs. He'll do one job for a little bit, then hop to another job or whatever, just kind of short, little brief stunts. But a lot of young men and borderline children are running around in this, but basically like his Boy Scouts. And they're on, and I believe it's if I'm not mistaken, it's a earlier version of a Corellian Corvette. But anyway, that they're on. And he Balo is basically like, "You suck, Mace Windu. You suck, Jedi. I hate you." And he's like, "All right, man." That's basically what happens. He's like, he expresses his frustration with the Jedi, and they catch wind of the Rift Walker's flagship is actually leaving Keldoween before they're interrupted by a call by Palpatine and Valorum, and which they have to basically end up backing off, chasing them to get in range of the call, which is unfortunate. Chapter 15. This is another one of my favorite chapters. Saci and Plo arrive at Quinn, and they end up taking a droid-piloted speeder. They end up getting swarmed by a bunch of other speeders, where they're cornered and automatically directed to kind of the hub of these transportations. And there's a ton of people there that are not happy.
The drivers.
Yeah, tune in
to drive these cabs.
They don't tell you for another
road. I'm driving it.
Yeah, those droids.
Yeah, so they're taking our jobs.
They took our jobs. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but they don't reveal that yet.
Sorry.
That's okay. It's like the chapter after this one. But then we go back to chapter 16, or go to chapter 16, where Depa and a small crew end up actually getting that Vial ship that ended up escaping the Assurance. And they get it with no qualms, because when that ship tries to jump, they end up using the last of their energy, or the last of their systems, and it ends up being like a derelict ship, basically. And so then this is a pretty cool part of the book where Zalastra is really into Sabacc, specifically traditional Sabacc, or a version that's from her home planet.
Yeah, I was going to ask. There's no face cards in Sabacc, are there?
So I had to look this up, right? So there's multiple versions of Sabacc. The two versions that I have in Sabacc are not the one she is talking about. There are so what I have is Corellian Spike and Coruscant Shift, and those use specific the shapes.
Yeah.
Though there is one that we see in Rebels. That is the one that has kind of the weird the weird kind of face cards, the special ones that she's talking about, and have the actual suits, the sabers, the staves, the flasks, and the coins. Those are the four suits. There's 76 cards. Yes, William.
So apparently more than 80 variant forms of Sabacc existed. One such form was Corellian Spike, like you said. Jabak, which is spelled like Sabacc but with a J and an H. Outlander, notably playing the Outlander Club in the Uskru Entertainment District of Coruscant. There's also Riftwalker Sabak.
Yes, she mentions that.
Yeah, and then Centron Sabak, and then there's the Empress Teta preferred style, the Coruscant Shift.
Yeah, that's from the Star Cruiser. It's the Coruscant Shift.
There's a million. I guess like it says, there's over 80 variants of the
What's
same.
Han
game.
and Lando playing solo?
That's Corellian Spike.
I would assume Corellian. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay. So that's the one where they're so Corellian Spike. You're trying to get to, basically you have positive and negative cards. You're trying to get to 0.
That's the one I've played. Basically.
That's like weirdly the most standard one. Even though there's a company that they're called Hyperspace Props. I've seen their stuff. They make really good Sabak cards, and they have a version that is kind of the one that they're talking about in this. It's not the Riftwalker version, but it is that like the special cards that they kind of mention in this book, where it's like the Idiot or the Demise or whatever it may be. That one, it appears in Rebels, and it has normally like Corellian Spike has 62 cards, but standard Sabak has 76 cards. So we're getting into some deep lore with the Sabak, is all I'm saying. I will say
23 or negative 23 was called a pure Sabak, an unbeatable hand called an Idiot's Array, consisting of the 2 Idiot. Yeah, it would be fun to play.
Yeah, maybe.
I played it. That'd be fun. That'd be gas.
We do like poker night, but it's all Sabak.
Exactly.
Hey, if we all end up going to ICCC, I'm just saying that'd be a fun little gag. I played. I almost entered it at MegaCon, a charity tournament for Sabak, and unfortunately, I waited 6 hours in line to meet Cal Kestis, great dude by the way, and did not get to enter, but it was real fun. And it was hosted by the people who make those cards, but yeah. So Zalastra uses like she's like kind of this card shuffler. And she's basically using the allegory of the 4 face cards, the staves or staffs, the sabers, the coins, and the flask, which are kind of like the vials, and then to represent each of them. And then the 5th one is she says to Kyla, like they're the game itself or whatever, which is like, it's kind of cool. Kind of mustache twirly. It was like, we're not one of the cards, we're the game itself, you know. Yeah. I get very 80s. But they basically, she also talks about how like when there's warring factions, the most dangerous number is when there's 5, you know, because of the way like they flip flop, you know. It's like if you have 3, then like the weaker one will that's kind of bad. But then 4, it's like, well, you always have basically 2 on one side at a time. But then 5, it's like, well, then you have it's shifting all around and stuff. So she's basically kind of presenting her case to them about how like she's trying to be top dog in the slice with all these gangs running amok. But Depa gives her another one of the Regal Voyager cases. I think at this point she's already given her 2. Chapter 17, Sacy and Plo negotiate with Quick Call. That's the name of the taxi. And basically, yeah, like you said, the drivers are mad because the droids are taking over their jobs, and the owner's like, I can't afford you guys. Like, nobody goes around in these things anymore. And basically, they make a deal where they're going to start doing boat tourism because nothing says that you can't do that. Then what they'll do is they'll use the droids to help clean up the streets, and Sacy is going to help turn these buses into like garbage haulers, and that way it'll provide jobs for the drivers, but as well for the create kind of an easy way to use the droids, and so it's kind of like a win-win-win for everybody sort of thing. Yeah. So that's what Sacy and Plo are doing, and then I guess I'll just go all the way here to like chapter 20. Chapter 18, Depa's still late to returning from her mission. Mace and Balo kind of hang around Keldwin in the meantime, and one of the Regal ships, not a passenger line, but a cargo ship, comes out of space, and they're basically talking about how they've had a really lucky streak of not being attacked, other than the time that Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan were on there, and Mace calls Obi-Wan to kind of figure out the details of the situation, and finds out that like, oh, they weren't working for any specific gang at all. and they're not really sure why Regal's freight like everybody else is being attacked like normal, but Regal has just had this lucky streak of not being attacked by any official gangs, which is curious. Chapter 19, Ethkoth, he's hanging out with Oppo and Seneschal Vo, and he's trying to take an inventory of these texts, these data pads, in this library that they have, which is described very cool, of being like these libraries around these like spires holding it. It's kind of cool.
Fishing book.
Say what?
Fishing book.
Well, that's there's a ton that are missing, but that's one of the first ones that he finds later on.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's basically like, where are these books at, man? He's like,
well, it's basically, like, didn't they say like when the Jedi made their mass exodus or whatever, they just kind of took whatever? It was like, well, I'm taking this with me.
Well, they what they say specifically is that Jedi would come and go, they would leave books, they would take books, but no one's really been there in a while, and so the count is not up to date.
Yeah.
And so they find out, well, there was a pest problem on the planet, and Vo ended up hiring a exterminator for because they would take high elevation, and because the sanctuary mount is up high on the mountain. And when he hired the person was like, hey, you can't be here because it's dead. Like, it's not like only I have the proper protective equipment. So he left, and then he never checked the books because he to be up there. And so it was theorized that they were stolen.
Yeah.
So it's a whole thing where Ethkoth's like, I better get these books.
Yep.
And it's funny because Oppo makes fun of him. He's just like, it's not that big of a deal, man. Like, just go out there, enjoy the planet, help some people, And Ethkoth's like, nah. He's like, I gotta find these books, man. So then chapter 20, Depa's still hanging out on the randomizer, which is Zalastra's ship. And they arrive on a planet called Valbaran. And that's where the Riftwalkers' big base is at. And she's kind of up to something with these cases from Regal Voyager. So you want to keep going?
Just keep it going.
Keep it going.
We should really the only real plot is with Depa. Other than that, everybody's just kind of hanging out, and doing their thing. We haven't gotten to that.
It's a lot of vignettes,
It's just slice of life, except she's the real plot. She's the only one that's actually in danger. So
John Jackson was like, they were like, can you make a Jedi Council book? He's like, yeah. Can I make Depa Billaba the real character? Because I made that Kanan book a while back. I could, make her pretty cool. And they were like, yeah, that's fine. Or he just snuck that in there. He was like, Depa Billaba actually main character of book. Which, hey, as a Kanan fan, again, it's really cool to see the legacy of because she was kind of a master where you're like, I don't really know much about her. And now I'm like, oh, out of all the characters here, she's easily my favorite now.
Yeah.
I the reason I liked that chapter earlier on, and I'll get back to recapping so we can just kind of have a full-fledged discussion about it, is basically when they have that little crash, when they're they steal the crate and then they crash into kind of the cross section, and then the gangs come out, and the visual of it's pouring rain and lightning is striking, and then she's sees Zalastra up on the she ducks down and everything, and it's this whole combat. I was like, this is just cool, man. This feels very weirdly. Here's a good. I mean, I felt very Batman, kind of because they're in this kind of rundown city, but also weirdly reminded me a lot. I'm just now thinking of that Spider-Man 1. When they're fighting when he saves Mary Jane.
Yeah, when he saves her from the jerks.
Yeah.
And the upside down kiss, all that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Iconic.
Yeah.
It's iconic, man.
It's very Star Wars video gamey.
Mm-hmm.
Is what it
it's here's it's a set piece, right? Where she swerves, and then did we ever find out why were the staved skulls? Why did they ambush them? Is it because they had the crates?
That's what I assumed.
This stuff keeps me up at night, guys.
I don't know.
I don't remember.
I
really don't.
I need the MO. I need the MO. I'll figure it out later. I think it was because they caught wind that they were working for the
If any of the 46 people in here right now know the answer, just throw it.
46 people?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I thought there would be like 2 people in here listening to this. That's crazy.
We're having a fun time. That's why you got to keep going so these people can figure out what happens in this book.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
About it.
What happened? Chapter 21, I'm going to go all the way to 28 because it gets crazy, guys.
Yeah.
Kiadi Mundi be dropping his ice cream, even though it's not cream at all. Anyway, we're going to get to that later.
Spice cream.
Chapter 21, Eth, he tracks down the books to this boutique. The owner is away because a bunch of books fell on him. That was so funny, dude. I was like, dang, bro, that's rough. But yeah, it's his wife is like owning it, and her name's like Pogi, I think. And the boutique is like filled to the brim, disarray of books. There's these little what are those little creatures? I didn't write them down in my my summary, but there's like these little creatures that are native to the planet, and she's like raising a bunch of them. They're like little lizards.
Oh, they're living in the tree, right? Aren't they hanging out in the tree outside?
Yeah, they're like they hang out in the tree, and she has like literally. She says there's like some like wrapped around her horns and stuff that are like
on her head. Yeah,
what are they? Yeah, I don't remember what they're called. They mention them a little bit later as well, with the despondent couple. But yeah, she's like, take all the books. I don't want them. He's like, I can't take them all, but can I have permission to like look through this? She's like, knock yourself out, man. Like, have fun. And he finds like there's a Jedi book in there, and he's like, okay, well, there has to be more in here that are more, because what is stated about this library is that it actually is pretty, compared to a lot of these other outposts that have like 2 books or something. Like, this one actually had a pretty sizable library, at least in what Vo had kind of it listed in the database. So this is when he calls Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, and he's like, please help me look through these books.
We need more than one person.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, I can't be doing this. Chapter 22, Zalastra. This is where the main plot gets kind of spicy, bro. Zalastra, she calls a meeting. They on the planet that they're on, like the whatever, all Valbaron. And with the other 4 gangs, I almost said Alderaan, and I was like, "What is it?"
Alderaan with a V.
Yeah, it's yeah. And she uses the cases as bombs. She basically sends these protocol droids that had been kind of teased, sends them to these other factions, and they all open them up simultaneously, except for hers, and blows up.
Blow up.
Yep, and these are like they throw out like a random like element. Like, it's like Baradium 34 or something like that. And it's like, there was enough Baradium 34 to blow up a whole starship or something. And you're like, they're just making elements out here. It's crazy. But yeah, so kills all of them, like all of the leaders of the Vials, the Stave Skulls, the Filthy Creds. Vials, Stave Skulls, Filthy Creds. Oh, the Poison Blades. Is that what they're called? Yeah.
Very Dark Knight Joker-esque.
Yes. Dude.
Taking out everybody so you can
even down to the cards, man.
Yes.
Like, yeah. And
the scars. And the
You want to know how I got these scars, Defabalava?
These hands. Yeah.
Defabalava's Batman. I'm just kidding.
She for our listeners at home, those aren't her hands.
Yeah, you'll get the tea. She be wearing gloves, and they ain't her normal green Nautilin hands.
Nope.
But yeah, immediately after they all get blown up, Zalastra ends up immediately being like, "Oh, Depabalab is a Jedi, by the way." Like,
yeah.
And so she's like, "Yeah." So and they capture her. Cool little action scene there. Back to Quinn, chapter 23. Yoda and Anigalia. That's like, please, I just want to read the Depabalava parts. This chapter I do like a lot. They're on one of the keys, or they're on this called like Paths of Harmony through this garden. Very cool.
What we talked about earlier, where they're hanging out in the park.
Yep, they hang out in the park. They watch the sunset, and he connects with like a local Celestin named Lyle. And this Lyle works at the local performing arena, which basically gets no use. And he's like, yeah, we need that for like 120,000 people. And he's like, you serious? And they're like, yeah, we're being serious. And so he kind of again opens up about like how his father has this illness, but also is kind of teased that he's involved in some shady business. And Yoda seems a little invested in this. He's concerned for Lyle. But they end up making the call, and they set up kind of this big celebration for the 200 years. Sorry. And then chapter 24, the Assurance is attacked by a Poison Blade warship, but quickly leaves. They do some research. Their ship kind of gets messed up a good bit, and they find out that various locations across the slice that all happened like basically simultaneously. They did. That drew away the blaze, and different locations. One's like the top of a spire, one's on Keldoween, one's on a space station, one's on a ship. And it's obvious we're connecting the dots. Oh, yes, this is the gang leaders. The explosions were triggered. The Poison Blades immediately got the call that their leaders blew up and they went back.
Exploded.
Yep, briefcases. And Balo and Mace, they debate, and Balo's like, we got to go, we should go to Keldoween to see if Depa Balaba's okay. And Mace ends up taking a breath, and he's like, no, like, we don't know anything yet. We don't even know she's there. It was in Poison Blade territory, or one of the other, no, Filthy Cred territory or whatever. Let's wait till we know more. In chapter 25, this is where Ki-Adi-Mundi is piddling around. He gets his ice mound where he's like, I want it ice flavored, and the guy's like, that's not a flavor, and he's like, that's your problem, bro.
You're out of your mind. I assure you, both of my brains are in proper working order.
Does he say both of my brains?
Yep.
Here's $1. Fix your sign.
Yeah. He's like, I don't know how to ring it up because you didn't choose a flavor, and he's like, this is for your sign, pal.
Yeah.
And so
120,000 lunches. We may require dinners as well.
Yeah, because he goes up and he negotiates with the people to be like, hey, we need to cater for this thing, and he's like, yeah, I need all this, and she's like, what?
She's like, who's paying for it? And he's like, the Jedi Order, and she's like, fuck, motherfucker.
Yeah, literally, she's like, I need to see some identification, and he literally pulls out his lightsaber and turns it on, and she's like, the Jedi Order, like
Yeah.
literally, that's exactly how it happens. And I'm like, that's great. But then Seth's favorite part is when this random lady runs up and she's like, "Oh my gosh, you're so handsome, Ki-Adi-Mundi," and then
just wait till you hear this in the audiobook.
It's
because it is so like it's so over the top.
He's literally just standing there like,
yeah,
what? Where she comes up and she's like, "You're so handsome," and your beard and everything, and then her husband kind of like runs up and he's like stop touching him, but then he gets onto Ki-Adi and is like quit harassing her, and he's like, I don't even know who this is, and then they're basically like, they own a company together, and he's been hiding that he's training a Wookiee to run the company because their company is authentically run by whatever species they are. I forget, like Iotrin or something. I don't even remember. Okay, and she's like, why'd you hide that from me? And basically he's like, Ki-Adi-Mundi's like, well, why were you doing that? Why were you hiding it? And he's like, because I wanted more time, or whatever. And she's like, well, you could be using that time to spend time with your wife because she seems desperate because she's got her hands all over me. And he's
ridiculous.
Like, it's ridiculous. Just like, what?
Absurd.
It is really absurd. And wasn't it like, basically like, yeah, just like we can advertise that you are training this and be like, hey, being made by a Wookiee's even better, or whatever. And so they're like, yeah, we're having this big celebration. We can advertise your thing there. And they're like, okay.
Yeah.
They're like, it's madness.
Everybody's problems are getting fixed because of the Centennial's happening. So there you go. That
But I may require another ice mound.
Yeah. He literally
his got knocked on the floor. He didn't even get to eat it.
Got stomped on by the other guy.
Yeah. By Johnny Bravo.
He just wanted his. Is that what the guy sounds like, Johnny Bravo?
Yeah, does kind of sound like Johnny Bravo. So yeah.
Oh man.
It's a name I haven't heard for quite some time.
Johnny Bravo in Star Wars.
Yep.
Hey, little my mom. We're going with the Jedi Order.
Yep.
Chapter 26. Kyla, she goes through the vents after kind of what happens on, what is it, Valberon or whatever. She finds the Idiot 3, which is what they're called. I'm not making this up.
Yep.
And she tells them what happened, and they're like, bleh! And then Zalastra's like, shut up, and shows them Depa Balaba. She's unconscious. She's strung up. Interesting little fact here is that the way they have her captured and playing this noise is actually what
in Andor, right?
That's a good thing too. I was actually thinking of in the High Republic, in Light of the Jedi, they do that with another Jedi that gets captured, where they have him imprisoned and they have this music blaring to where he just can't like concentrate at all.
Yeah. Andor is what I was thinking of too.
I was thinking Andor,
I mean, yeah,
or like Chewbacca in Cloud City. Where they
were Oh, that's a perfect example too. Yeah.
Where they just can't focus up. So you can't use the Force if you can't focus. So yeah.
So they're like sleep depriving her, and then they'll only turn it off when they're asking her questions and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, Zalastra's
make an
like
example out of her.
They're like, we're gonna figure out what she's doing, and we're gonna kill her.
And next chapter's a Yaddle chapter.
Yaddle finally pulling up to Quinn, bro. Yaddle, what are you doing? She meets up. Basically, she's driving around on a speeder and trying to.
How do her feet reach the pedals? That's all I wanted to say.
I think it's like, I don't even know.
It's heavily modded. They said that because like kids use it. Yeah, but still.
Yeah,
that's all my thought was like how her feet reach the pedals.
It's
like sitting on a phone book. She's sitting on the Jedi archives.
I told my dad about this one of the earlier chapter, like with back on the boots thing, and they're asking Yoda's opinion. He's like, I've never worn shoes. He's like, yeah. He's like, don't ask me, bro. I don't.
Yeah. My dogs are out, bro.
Yeah. He's like, I love my little toes. Yeah, she meets up with Evan Peel, who ends up sending a speeder for her. And yeah, they're painting the
outside of the school, right? Or like
not the
courtyard.
School. They're painting the outside of the Rendili Spaceworks, who is funding the school, I guess. Okay. So it's become this whole like chain subsidiary thing, and so he's like, we're teaching art class, and they're painting stuff on
the neighborhood. They're cleaning it up.
Yeah.
One group's picking up the trash, the other group's making it look pretty. I mean, like, the Jedi are gonna fix everything.
It's literally like public service. But yeah, these reporters show up, and I didn't fully get how this exactly was supposed to work. I'm just kind of riding with it for now, or they basically are like, yeah, if we do this, like people will know that there's something is responsible and blah blah blah. And I'm like, okay, sure. Because these reporters show up and Yaddle talks to them, and they're like, oh, what do you guys? She like points out one that's not even a reporter, is like holding the camera, and she's like, I want to hear your questions, you know?
Yeah.
And she's like, well, let me sit down because I got a whole list of these random people from the Jedi Council. And then in chapter 28, this is honestly, I didn't make it to 31. Seth, you could attest better to this, but this is the last chapter that I got to because again, I'm a bum, and basically Depa wakes up. And this is a very juicy chapter where Zalastra and Kyla are playing cards. She explains that she actually was gradually sending these cases to the other gangs, making it look like it was from the Regal company, that they were asking for protection, and then basically kept doing it until eventually they were convinced that there was money in it, because she was using money, her own money, in the crates. Eventually got to the point where all of them trusted the crates enough to make them think that this is legit. They weren't attacking or anything, until finally, when she, like the time before that, where all of them were like on board with opening them simultaneously, that was when that set of crates had the explosions and took them all out. And then she kind of explains why she has it out for the Jedi.
Which I thought this was interesting.
Very interesting. Basically, she was an orphan. Her family died. Her mom died in like a mining accident or something. She gets put into an orphanage with just 2 other people. Jedi shows up, takes the other 2, does not take her, doesn't even help because I guess the other 2 are Force sensitive. She was not. They didn't even try to help her. Within a month, the nanny droid of the orphanage fizzles out.
Caretaker. Yeah.
Yep. falls apart, whatever. She gets caught up with the gang. So that's just like the first straw. Gets caught up with the gangs, and then when and it's with a different gang at the time, when she's kind of more lowly, a Jedi shows up, and because she was viewed as the enemy, viewed as a bad guy, they get attacked or whatever, and you think that she gets her hands cut off by the Jedi, but no, she actually willingly, like, which I don't know exactly how this works.
It seemed like she blew her hands off.
Yeah, basically, like she tackled him with like a thermal thing in her, not a thermal detonator, but something like that in her hands.
Yeah, like she had a grenade and she held it to him, like yeah,
and it blew her hands off, and then she got new different hands.
Yeah,
and then what the reason Depa Billaba was investigating the whole area to begin with is because not her Padawan, because I don't think she's had a Padawan yet, but one of her students that she taught. A guy named Zoran, ended up getting killed in the slice, and Zalastra ends up revealing that she strangled him. That like basically, I think she like drugged him so that he couldn't fight back and strangled him. So
she's a mean lady, folks.
She's not
mean lady.
She's not great. Not great. I will say. I personally really like her as a villain. I know she's kind of a one-off thing, but like, that's kind of the fun, is trying to get those like one-off villains. And I think as a crime boss of a faction that we have never heard of before, and getting that backstory, like the idea of her having like hands that aren't her, like, I mean, they're not robot hands, but like, but like
they were transplanted on.
Yeah, they were the only ones that fit. But she's like actually really good with her hands now. Like she's like wields 2 pistols. She's like really good at flipping cards and splitting them. And
so that's she's neat.
Yeah, she's cool. I completely agree with you, Seth, that like the Depa and Zalastra chapters are definitely like the main plot. Now, he could spoil it for us. I'm not going to tell him to, but I'm sure it will come into play eventually. I hope. Otherwise, it'd be kind of weird. You're making a face, Will.
What comes into play?
Do all the plot threads connect eventually?
Well,
it wraps
I'm sure that the bicentennial or whatever is happening, and then they're saving her, and like I'm sure that Ki-Adi Mundi gets to serve lunch or whatever. I don't know. They're like,
the lunch lady Ki-Adi Mundi.
Yep, it'll be great
with a 2XL lunch lady thing over his head.
Yep.
Or he has one of those chef hats, but it just takes off his. He has like a one of the, what is it, like the or he like a gallon hat.
He's wearing a chef hat. It actually fits his head.
Yeah,
it's not
like,
exercise. It's just
it's perfect.
If they're like, oh, take that off, and it's just actually his head size.
Yeah, like whoa.
It's got a hairnet under that, but it's all cone. Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
perfect.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I do say about Zanestra is like a bad character whose sibling was taken by the Jedi from a mining colony is like kind of exactly what happened at the Acolyte too, because like isn't that town where they're from an ex-mining town? That mountain that they're at?
Do they say that? I don't know.
I'm pretty sure because that's the whole point with like where they are. It's like a mining area.
Oh,
what is it? What is the name of the planet again? No.
Brendock.
Brendock.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
There has been a lot of examples of like people getting whisked away.
It was her friends because they were all in an orphanage together.
Yeah.
And her 2 friends get taken.
Yeah.
And that's
I'll
admit, it's not very nice. The Jedi should have figured something out for her. Couldn't just leave her.
And even Depa Billaba's like, like they should have done better. Like I'm not, like I won't even lie. That's not like
the Jedi way.
Yeah, she's like, unfortunately, like that's sometimes what happens, and of course that kind of makes things worse. But like, it's I guess it fits in line with what we're seeing in Acolyte and stuff. But it also is good to see that. Yes, the Jedi are helping be like, oh, we're going to help these people get their jobs back, That's the breath of fresh air for me, because I'm like, because I have been getting the High Republic, and the Jedi are awesome in that. Like, that's when you hear the legacy of the Jedi and everything. And I mean, granted, even in the Clone Wars, we have our favorite of like, oh, look at the heroes, and the shot of, in Gindy's, right, of Anakin and Obi-Wan basically on like the horses or whatever, like riding in with like he's like, How many Jedi? 500? 100? 10? And he's like, dude, I might watch that tonight, honestly. Like, that is
good stuff.
God,
They're
so
great,
man.
Star Wars.
Yeah, man. Good stuff. I need that. You know what? That's super random. That would be awesome to re-release in like theater. No, not re-release in theaters, to release in theaters. That would be really cool to do like the full volume 1, volume 2 back to back with the crowd.
Then watch Revenge of the Sith right after.
That would be gas, dude.
Yep.
Dude, you got if you take that and then Clone Wars season 7 and Revenge of the Sith, you've got like a 10-hour cut of just like Revenge of the Sith, like just content, you know.
Yep.
But yeah, so that is thus far what we've read. I know it's not a super this is not a super in-depth book, but
we don't. I was gonna say we don't have a whole lot to talk about. Nothing's
we kind of talked about the rest of it at the beginning too.
Yeah.
The stuff that we brought up.
Yeah, I will mention. I got a couple little notes. Okay. So Seneschal Vo his species is a BIM, BIMM. His first species appeared in Heir to the Empire.
Really?
And I'm not kidding. When they described him, I was like, that's probably what he looks like one of those aliens. I looked it up and I was like, oh my God, that's exactly what I imagined.
Yeah.
They have like half-haired versions or like hairless versions or whatever, but like they're just kind of all part of the same species, which is kind of cool. I already mentioned the whole Depa doing kind of canon-esque stuff, being kind of in the criminal element and everything. And I already mentioned the council members. Another really cool connection back to Plagueis earlier this year, the very first canonization of the Yinshori from Plagueis and Legends is mentioned in this book. Zalastra mentions the Yinshori, which, if you remember, in Plagueis were the species that Plagueis kind of orchestrated to send to the attack on that Jedi temple. They had they were like the lizard people that had like weirdly immune, like they were like kind of immune to the Force, which I don't know if that resides currently in the same canon, but still a lot of
it's happening.
Yeah.
What's the actor who plays Wicket's name?
Warwick Davis.
Warwick Davis. He plays a BIM in Phantom Menace, where like his like side character where he's there, that's a BIM species. He's one of the BIM species as well. Where he doesn't look like the more cat-like, but his species is considered a BIM.
What?
Yep.
Oh no, that's his name.
The BIMs were diminutive humanoids from the planet Bimasari.
Yeah, Warwick Davis. His character is named. Wait, what?
I'm pretty sure that's his species. They're near human. So like some of them can look like cat people, and some of them just look like furred BIMs and stuff like that. I'm pretty sure.
What the heck, bro? I swear I thought he was just a human.
Yeah, well, human-esque. They're near human.
This is weird though. This is on Star Wars Bloodlines fandom.
Yeah, so though the two species were completely unrelated biologically, they shared a language and cultural identity as BIMs. So it's more like because of where they are, they're the same species, but they're not based on
BIM.
Yeah,
because of where they came from.
Like the BIMs consisted of two species, one a near human race, so like Warwick Davis, and the other a floppy-eared furred humanoid species, and they kind of look like what are those Egyptian hairless cats called?
They kind of, weirdly enough, the furred species kind of look like the ones that they're not blue, but they kind of look like the ones that we see in Gindis, the blue aliens that Anakin saves. Seth, did this have a name? I don't remember.
Yeah, they start with Nelvan warriors.
Yeah, the Nelvan. Yeah, you're right. See, Seth, you're a good Star Wars fan. You know this stuff, bro.
I try, but then occasionally, like, there's some random.
You're supposed to remember all of this, man.
Yeah, exactly, man. You guys named the dinosaur Jedi who has like a normal name like Carl, and how am I supposed to remember that? That like
Carl Trevor.
Yeah,
That's
exactly,
so funny, bro.
We got this comment from Metroplex. Imagine being a Star Wars fan and not know literally every single Star Wars species.
It's absolutely insane. Like, again, I was so mad at that one sentence that like you got to be coming up to it, Grayson. Where like they talk about like 6 different systems, and I'm like, I've not heard of one of those.
Yeah,
not one.
Can you have the page? I'll skip ahead. I'll do it right now.
I don't have it. I don't because I do audiobook.
What was it in the last chapter that you read?
It's either it had to have been in 20. Let's see. It had to have been 29.
Okay, well, that's the chapter that I'm on right now. Let's see.
Yeah. I don't know who says it. I think that, man, I don't even remember who says it.
There's so many points in this book where it's like that, though.
Yeah, where I'm just like, this is so stupid.
There are a lot of one-off characters that I'm like, dude, it is sort of the things we do long ago, like in places like Koblop Springs, the planet Tenu, or Jedi. Is that it?
Koblop.
Kublop, or whatever, bro. Oh, okay, well, that's on the actual planet.
Yeah.
There is a lot of that. Like, that's the thing with these books where you're like, I see a lot of memes about like when you're reading like fantasy and stuff, and you're like, bro, what? Like, what am I reading?
I will say the last third of this book it's enjoyable. Like, it's not, it's not so much like the little vignettes and spotlights on characters. Like, it makes sense. The end it picks up, and I really enjoyed the end of it. Where
I hope they can stick this landing, because right now there's too many people. Like, the real plot isn't even on the planet with everybody else.
Yeah, it's fun. The way it ends, I know at points I felt the same way, Seth, where I was like kind of trudging through this, where I'm like, I don't need to know about Keanu Mundi getting ice cream and getting hit on. Like, I don't
like
care.
That just floored me, where I just was like, yeah, it's funny, but I'm just like, whatever though. I mean, like, at this point, I've had so much slice of life and so much fish out of water. This is so awkward. Oh, we don't have attachments, and she's all over me, and it's just whatever.
What it kind of feels like is like in an animated like Justice League or Avengers show where they put out the call where they like need everybody to team up, and you get like the scenes of like, oh, it's Green Lantern and he's in this bar and he's doing something like, oh, we're having fun, we're playing and like the thing, or like Teen Titans where like the signal will go off and it'll be like, oh, guys, I gotta get out of here, see you next time, and then they go. It's like if, rather than getting to that part of like,
that's the whole book,
it's like that. It's just like only that for the first 2/3. So the rest of the book, it's more fun. But like, that's really the gist of the first half.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say, I know I kind of was the one who picked out the book. So Seth, if you hate it, I apologize. Not that I made it.
I don't hate it, guys. I'm never gonna say.
I know you don't hate it, but I don't want someone to read a book and be like, man, this I don't want you to, again. The whole point of this, and this is for the audience as well, is like, if you're reading it and you're like, what is this? That's fine. The same stuff that we're experiencing with like the shows and whatnot of the mass discourse of like, and I'm like, guys, if you were to read all of the books, I could guarantee you'd find one where you're going to be like, you're or a ton. I mean, the same thing applied to Legends, right? Like, there were books and stuff or like comics that I was just like, that just doesn't interest me, right? Yeah. It's like, we're at the point now where Star Wars is becoming very, I don't want to say oversaturated, because to me but there is a lot more.
I would say saturated,
a lot of content,
like,
and it's getting to that point now where it's like, listen, you don't have to like everything, know, and that's okay. Like, a lot of people, when it came back to the EU, a lot of people were really into the sun loves to do this in my face. A lot of people they were like really into the X-Wing stuff, right? Or some were really into the Old Republic stuff, or some were really into the Jedi Academy stuff, or the Han Solo books, or whatever it may be, like, and that came to the games. Like, some people are really into the Empire at War RTS video game, whereas others are into the tabletop stuff, or others are into The Force Unleashed, or Republic Commando. Like, Jon Favreau made like an excellent interview where he was like, the beauty about Star Wars is like how many subgenres there are. Like, how like Star Wars is like, it itself is a genre, but also like, there's also all these other genres within it. Your Western and your samurai and your military and all kinds of stuff. Your war movie, like, and so that's cool. So this really is like, like, if you want to get a taste of a slice of life Star Wars project, and yes, they're obviously like with Depa and everything, that feels very traditional Star Wars. Like, and obviously that's my favorite part of the book so far. But I definitely think like, it's a good one to have when you want a lot of levity and everything, and
Yeah.
maybe not as high stakes, you know.
It's fun.
But then sometimes you want a book where it's like, man, like one of the books that I really, really want to read, and Will has already beat us to the punch, but Shadows of the Sith, which takes place before The Force Awakens, and it's about Luke and Lando, and a lot of setup for that sequels, and I hear nothing but great things about that book.
It's really fun.
Yeah,
and not fun like we're like, it's fun. It's cool. I enjoy it a lot
because it's Luke still being a Jedi.
Yeah.
Like you don't ever think of like a Luke Lando team up.
No, it works too.
Yeah, I'm like,
it's like Luke and Han hanging out.
Yeah.
You know, one of my favorite things, and I was thinking about this the other day, and I know this is completely tangential, and we can wrap up here soon because we've been going for over 2 hours now. But I was thinking about,
and there's only 3 of us.
Yeah, that's where I was like, hey, it's fine, and I think just to let people know, like you might see more of that more often, where there might be not the full cast of us, but maybe more interchangeable people where it's like, hey, like I'm going to tap out of this book or I'm going to hop into this book, you know, because we want it to be fun. And so, you know, the completionist I am, I'll be on every single one, but that doesn't mean that like, you know, Connor and Seth and, Seth's here. Connor and Tony and Cole are not here, and that's okay because you get our 3 beautiful mugs. But I was thinking of Jedi Outcast, one of my favorite Star Wars video games. I didn't realize the connection to Heir to the Dude, the sun is going crazy in my face right now. I did not realize the connection.
Just scoot back slightly.
I did not realize the connection to. I didn't realize the connection to Heir to the Empire in that game. Billy D. Williams fully voices Lando in that game, because Billy D. Williams, if you ask him to be Star Wars, he will do it, bro.
Yeah.
His agent's like, yes. But what was cool is in part of that game is you're getting the Lady Luck back. It's like under impound, which I didn't know was from Heir to the Empire, which is really cool.
It's a ship, right?
It's a ship. It's just like it's his like luxury yacht, and I was like, "That's dope. That's super Lando right there." But you play as Kyle Katarn, but you like having like a Jedi Lando team up is really fun. So with Shadows of the Sith, I'm really excited to be like see it. That there's also a new Sith Lord in that
really
book.
Cool. Yeah,
like,
it's cool.
Darth Noctis is his name or their name.
It's really fun.
Yeah,
I think it should be on our list.
We got to put that on a list.
Well, maybe we should read that next.
Maybe I got it on my shelf, bro. I will get that to that lickety split.
That's
gotcha.
Cool.
Yeah. But yeah, so we will be back roughly about a month to finish out the book. Maybe if we finish, I mean, Will's already read it. If Seth and I finish it early, maybe we'll expedite it. If the book intrigued you, feel free to read it yourself. Give us your opinion. Oh my gosh, look who's in the chat right now. It's the other half of the dyad.
Connor's just been. If you look where Seth is, Connor has just been sitting across from him the entire
just
time.
turned the camera. Connor's
staring at him. If you turn the camera, Connor's just standing in the room. It's just in the corner, like
I'll say that Connor is not far from Seth right now. That's
yeah.
But yeah, so I know this book is definitely not as lore intensive or anything, but we hope that if you've been keeping along with it, that you enjoyed it, or if you've already read it. And we'll be back to finish off the last half, and maybe all the puzzle pieces will come into play, because there's a lot of them. There's a lot of puzzle pieces.
Let's just hope everybody ends up all in the same place.
It's gonna happen. It'll happen.
I hope so.
It'll happen. And so here's why I'm enjoying the book a lot. And this is also another book that I would love to read on this on this stream podcast thing, this show, is Darth Maul Shadowhunter, which is a great Legends book, and it takes place right before the Phantom Menace as well. It kind of tied into Plagueis a little bit, which was cool. And that one is one where it switches perspectives a lot, but it's one of those where the perspective switching is like, yeah, you're kind of like, oh man, I wanted to hear a little bit more about this character. But by the end of that book, I was like, these characters rock. I love getting the story from, like, because you hop around from 3 main characters, that being, I mean, and there's a couple little interludes where it's like, it'll be like from Newt Gunray's perspective for like 1 chapter or something. But it's like goes from Maul to a Jedi to one of the other main, like he's kind of like an information broker guy, kind of smuggler type character. And it goes between their 3 as this like pursuit is happening. And it's really good stuff. So I was kind of used to this because it wasn't as jarring reading this because I was like, okay, well, at least I know all of the Jedi Council members, even though I don't know the way that they act. But yeah, it will be like, here's Mace Windu, and here's Yaddle, and here's Ki-Adi Mundi. Oh, back to Depa Billaba. All right, here's Mace Windu again. Back to Depa Billaba. Yeah. Here's Stacey Tint, and not that that's a bad thing. It's just it hops around a lot. So we'll see how it wraps up. But I'm enjoying it so far.
It'll be fun. You guys will enjoy the end.
Good.
Yeah.
Will gave the seal of approval.
He's
probably just because Qui-Gon shows up.
It's not my favorite book, but it's fun.
It's a fun book, yeah. Sometimes you need a fun book, because we weren't the biggest. Exactly, we weren't the biggest fan of Dark Disciple, and this is scratching the itch for me.
Well,
I'll
leave it on this for our Acolyte predictions. I need a flashback of Tormund going full Torbius, saying it's Tormund time to kill Naka.
That's going to happen, actually. My sources tell me.
Spoiler alert, yeah, it already happened. Bye!
May the force be with you.